Han Li's Wuxia Adventures. Chapter 2761. As expected, the commander's principle of not causing trouble and being cautious was completely correct. You wouldn't know about those unknown dangers while roaming the pugilistic world. Perhaps a seemingly adorable little stoic girl was in existence that could take people's lives the moment she made a move. The little mercenary Dong Zi silently retreated and shrank into the group. Commander Dell was naturally very shocked on the inside. Right now, she was extremely glad that she didn't harbor enmity towards the little Stoics group from the start. The little girl and her group weren't troublemakers. As long as the people in her group were sensible enough and didn't provoke them, naturally nothing would happen. Dell exhaled and hastily turned around with the group. At this time, a scouting mercenary poked his head out from the forest and whispered something into Dell's ear. Dell's eyes brightened slightly, and she quickly nodded and left with her group. At the same time, Miss Chiao heard the little water baby's excited voice in her mind. "Master, master, master, ahead, let's go ahead. I can smell the scent of natural water." Arbor was startled and communicated mentally. "What's natural water?" "It's a type of 9-layered spirit water," the little water baby said excitedly. "It hasn't been comprehended by anyone yet. Before that, Jiandian can devour it. After devouring it, Jiandian can probably enter the growth stage." The more the little water baby spoke, the more excited it became. It wished for nothing more than to immediately jump out of Paradise Planet. Arbor couldn't help but be speechless and immediately stopped it. "You're not allowed to come out. I'll go take a look." "Master, master. Natural water, natural water." Arbor rolled his eyes and tossed the little fellow's noisy cries to the back of his mind. He looked up and said to Mo Lien, "Little water told me that there's a type of 9-layered spirit water ahead that's very useful to it. Let's go look for it." "Okay." Mo Lien naturally didn't have any objections. Everyone didn't set up camp. Previously, they were sitting around a tree and barbecuing, so they moved very quickly now. After pouring a layer of ice water over the fire and putting it out, everyone casually picked up their bags and followed Miss Chiao forward. With the little water baby's senses, there was naturally no problem with the direction. Not long after, the group arrived at the depths of the forest and stopped in their tracks. Duan Yu's figure drifted forward as he stared fixedly at the empty area before him. Before this, they could sense that Dell's 100-man mercenary group was right in front of them. But the strange thing was, in just a few minutes, Dell and the others suddenly disappeared. "Everyone, be careful." Mo Lien suddenly grabbed Arbor, who was beside her, and both of them moved slightly to the left, jumping away from a sudden vine attack. As for Lu Yu and Hua Tao, one of them summoned an earth wall while the other released several water spirits to block the twisting vines. Suddenly, a fierce gust of wind rose from the center of the forest. It was like a broken pocket that had its bottom leaked, sucking everyone forward with a cold gust of wind. Qi Xianxian was caught off guard and her entire body was swept up. Everyone was shocked and without thinking, they reached out to grab her. Ma Ta grabbed Qi Xianxian's arm first and was dragged several meters forward. Her feet slid through the forest's vegetation, leaving behind a trail of dirt. The little fatty pounced forward and hugged Qi Xianxian's waist. With his weight on top of hers, Qi Xianxian, who was originally being sucked forward, finally managed to stabilize herself. Chapter 2762. On the other side, Miss Chiao was also pulled a few steps back by the strange suction force. Then, Mo Lien reached out and pressed her down on the ground. The strong wind suddenly blew, and the fallen leaves swept the ground. The sand was almost blinding. There was something in the middle of the forest. Arbor narrowed his eyes and threw out a blue talisman. He shouted, "Reveal yourself." The reveal talisman flashed and landed in the middle of the forest. Instantly, a shadow flashed in front of everyone's eyes, and a strange huge beast appeared. Wow! What a big fish! Little Fatty looked up against the strong wind and squinted his eyes. He couldn't help but exclaim. This was really an 8-legged strange fish that they had never seen before. Its fat belly was bulging, and it had 8 short legs. It had a big golden carp head. Its 2 eyeballs were rolled up like dead fish eyes, and it stared at them coldly. As soon as this lousy fish opened its mouth, a gust of wind rolled up the dead branches and withered leaves in front of it. It sucked in the sky and the earth as if it wanted to suck the whole world away. The trees were rolled up by the strange wind and were sucked into its big mouth. Qi Xuanxuan's face turned green. She opened her mouth and exclaimed, "Damn, is this strange fish eating?" Xian, you know the truth. Little Fatty and the rest thought bitterly in their hearts. If this went on, when the strange fish sucked away all the flowers and plants around them, they would be the only fat fish left to be slaughtered. Fight it! Hua Tao roared and released a water spirit from his hand. In a split second, the strong wind blew it away. It didn't even land on the fish. His movement seemed to have infuriated the big-headed fat carp. It breathed heavily, and the fierce wind sucked Hua Tao into its mouth. Damn! Little Fatty hurriedly reached out to grab Hua Tao's clothes. But how could he grab it in such a hurry? A ripping sound was heard. The corner of Hua Tao's shirt was torn off by the little Fatty, but his body still flew uncontrollably towards the fat belly fish. Several people hurriedly stretched out their hands and shot out several streams of spiritual power, intending to slow down Hua Tao's body, but it was useless. The whirlwind released by this strange fish was too fierce. Under the tearing, it only made Hua Tao's outer clothes become riddled with holes, which was very funny. Mo Lien said, "This strange fish's attack power is probably average, but the strange wind it creates is very annoying. Jojo, you stay here. I'll go over and kill it." How could Jojo be willing to back down? He shook his head and said, "Let's go together." He let go of his hand and allowed himself to be sucked in by the strange wind. Mo Lien hurriedly followed after him. As soon as the two of them reached the mouth of the fish, they almost fainted from the stench. "What are you doing?" When Duan Yu saw the two of them being sucked over, he quickly wanted to follow. Arbor pinched his nose and turned around to wave at him. He endured the overwhelming stench and shouted at him, "It stinks to death, don't come over." Did this big-headed carp not bathe in several hundred years? It was simply stinky to the heavens. When the strange fish saw two people being sucked over, it smugly opened its mouth and was about to bite them. In the blink of an eye, Arbor casually took out a rod-shaped spirit weapon from his inner world and erected it. Ah! The strange fish bit down with its sharp teeth, but its upper jaw was almost pierced through by this rod. It was in so much pain that it let out a human-like scream. "Your ancestor is in so much pain. Where did this little scoundrel come from, to be so wicked?" Its dead fish eyes had just revealed a vicious glint when several of its teeth were pried out by the roots. "Fish, I feel like I'm going to be in for a tragedy." Chapter 2763. Arbor used that rod to press against the fish's mouth and swung the ferrule down twice, smashing the fish's row of sharp teeth into powder. The big-headed carp screeched as it crawled and rolled on the ground. It must be an unbearable pain. Seeing that it still dared to scream, Arbor took out a crowbar-like spirit weapon from his inner world and pulled out several teeth from the fish's lower body. The strange fish's two fins wobbled pitifully, and the entire fish sprawled on the ground as though it was dead. If it had hands, it would definitely be clutching its head and begging for mercy, or even the crying kind. Duan Yu covered his nose and approached to take a look. His mouth involuntarily twitched. Heavens, Jojo, this child was savage and ruthless. She actually crippled this big-headed carp into this state. This pitiful fish was like a tiger that had its canine teeth pinched by a clamp now that it had lost its teeth. It was completely unable to display its might. Arbor stood in front of the fish's mouth, seemingly expressionless. Perhaps only Mo Lien knew that the little fellow was on the brink of a violent convulsion from the stench. The crown prince was amused but could only stifle his laughter. He had no choice but to raise his hand to stroke the little fellow's fur. "Jojo, let's go out first." The two of them jumped out of the fish's mouth. Arbor immediately controlled the water to rinse that sticky ferrule 18 times before storing it in his conscience. He switched to a washboard, and without making a sound, he suddenly burst into action. Lady Chiao Chiao rushed to the front of the dead fish. Without saying a word, she swung her washboard and used all her might to beat that fellow to death who told you not to bathe for several hundred years. Who told you to stink like this? Who told you to suffocate this darling to death? Who told you to act like this? Everyone was instantly at a loss for words. Duan Yu quickly reached out to stop Qi Xianxian and company, who wanted to help. Let her beat it, let her beat it. The little fellow was currently extremely displeased. She had to vent it out. Qi Xianxian and the rest silently counted. When Lady Jojo thrashed that dead fish 58 times with the washboard, she stopped all her actions. "Vomit," the little girl expressionlessly shouted. Everyone was speechless. She really wanted to laugh, even though she didn't understand what Jojo meant by vomit. However, the little girl's one word was like an order. The big-headed carp quickly opened its mouth and spat out something. When Qi Xianxian saw this, she almost vomited too. This was so fucking disgusting. A pile of stinky acid gushed out. There were also countless human skulls, arm bones, and so on in this row of acid, piled up into a small hill. Then, the strange fish spat out piles of ores and piled them up neatly. God knows how many random things this guy had eaten in the past few hundred years. Hua Tao and the others followed suit and vomited while washing the ores with spiritual water. Prince Mo looked at these things with disdain. He picked up a branch from the side and fiddled with the ores. He kept calling out to Hua Tao and Mata, "Wash it here, wash it here, wash it clean. It's so disgusting. There's even mucus on it. Hurry and rinse it clean. This, wash away all its vomit." Prince Mo used the branch to pull out a fist-sized snow crystal, and his eyes brightened. He didn't expect this dead fish to have such good stuff in its stomach. Hua Tao and Mata felt a bit miserable. Their water spirit wasn't used to attack people. It was used to wash away the residue in the dead fish's stomach. After working for so long, it was really quite tiring. Chapter 2764. When the torment finally ended, Hua Tao wiped the sweat off his forehead and looked at Crown Prince Mo beside him. "It's about time. Put it away." Prince Mo looked at the pile of ores that were washed clean and nodded reluctantly. "Give me your weapons later and I'll reforge them." Hua Tao and the rest's eyes lit up. They happily replied, "Okay," and quickly helped the crown prince put away the ores. At the same time, the unlucky big-headed carp's vomiting was also coming to an end. The big-headed carp opened its mouth and spat out hundreds of people. It was as if they were taking a dump. The people who rolled out one after another had their faces covered in the weird fish's vomit. They looked at the glaring sunlight in front of them in confusion. Degree, what happened? Where were they? Why did their vision feel so blurry? Dai used her sleeve to wipe the vomit on her face. She stared at the disgusting mucus on her hand in disgust. She turned around to look at the 2-meter-tall weird fish behind her. She opened her mouth in shock. This? When did this weird fish get here? Actually, they didn't know what had happened at all. After Dai received the news from the mercenary scouts, she led a group of people to their destination. Halfway there, they suddenly felt a gust of wind. They didn't take any precautions and were inexplicably sucked in by the suction force. With this suction, they all entered the big-headed carp's stomach. The big-headed carp didn't just spit out the 100 people from Ber's mercenary group. Other than that, there was also a group of people from Zhong Li's residence. The second young mistress of Zhong Li's family was screaming everywhere. She used her sleeve to wipe the vomit on her head. Her vision turned black and she almost fainted. Heavens, this is too disgusting. Looking at the sticky vomit all over her body and hands, Zhongli Jiwei screamed and grabbed a water spiritualist from her family. Quick, quick. Quick. Wash it clean. Ah. Zhongli Jiwei stomped her feet on the spot. As for the young lady standing beside her, she walked to the side with a calm expression on her face. She quickly cleaned up the dirt on her body and changed into a slightly cleaner outer robe. Although she had not taken a bath, her body was still dirty. She frowned hard, but she did not scream like Zhongli Jiwei, as if the whole world was against her. Oh my God, what kind of nonsense is this? Ah! Are these intestines? Ah! Why was there such a disgusting thing hanging on her head? Zhongli Jiwei's vision turned black. Ever since she left the fish's stomach, the screams never stopped. Arbor felt a headache coming on. His eyes flashed fiercely as he roared, "Shut up!" The world suddenly quieted down, and everyone's eyes focused on her. Zhongli Jiwei stared at her in disbelief with a pile of vomit and screamed, You. Why are you here? Belatedly, she realized that Prince Mo was tidying up a pile of oars on the side. She couldn't help but exclaim, Your Highness. Without another word, Arbor raised the washboard in his hand and rushed over. Duan Yu couldn't stop her in time even if he wanted to. Seeing this little fellow dashing in front of Zhongli Jiwei, his temper flared up, and he swung the washboard at Zhongli Jiwei's head. Everyone was speechless. Chapter 2765. Don't you understand human language when I told you to shut up? Arbor's head swelled with pain from this woman's yelling. Viciousness appeared in his eyes, and he didn't care what this woman was scolding and directly beat her to death. If he had known that this woman was also in the fish's stomach, he wouldn't have let the dead fish spit her out. Annoying. The scene was dead silent, and everyone shrank back in fear, trying to keep a distance from the Zhongli family's servants. What are you doing? A shocked cry came from the side. Shi Yongqian, who didn't manage to hitch a ride on the Qin estate's young master's air transportation spirit artifact, could only set off with the aristocratic families from the capital. She was originally full of anger, and now that she saw the young crown princess, she was even angrier. Actually, Shi Yongqian was only a 5th-level spiritual master with a 5th-level spiritual fire cultivation. Based on cultivation, it was impossible for her to be accepted by the Imperial Academy. The strange thing was that the Imperial Academy accepted talents from all walks of life. For example, 5th young master Qin, a good-for-nothing, was accepted because of his outstanding zither skills. And Shi Yongqian's specialty was smelting ores. Although she was relatively young, she had already become a very outstanding smelting master and was one of the more outstanding talents in the entire Shi family. Arbor naturally knew that Shi Yongqian also had a smelting master identity. In her previous life, this woman had often flaunted this talent in front of her. But so what? Miss Qiao didn't need her to smelt ores or forge spirit artifacts. Her lotus knew everything, and with the sacred fire in hand, smelting anything was a piece of cake. There was no need to give this woman any face at all. Just as Shi Yongqian was reprimanding, Miss Qiao had already knocked Zhongli Jiwei unconscious. Hearing the sound, she leisurely stopped and turned to look at Shi Yongqian. Do you also want a few hits? You. Shi Yongqian had a sullen feeling like a scholar meeting a soldier, unable to reason clearly. You want to reason with the crown princess, right? She punched you, how could you explain clearly? Shut up. Arbor angrily rebuked, so long-winded and full of nonsense. If I had known, I would have let you all die in the fish's stomach. How could she have known that in this dead fish's stomach, apart from Dell's group, there were still so many useless people? As the saying goes, money can't buy anything. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have saved him. At this time, a young lady who was originally standing next to Zhongli Jiwei and had walked to the side to silently tidy her clothes walked back. She nimbly cupped her fists and bowed to Qiao Mu and the others. Many thanks to the Crown Prince Consort for lending a hand. Who are you? Arbor glanced at the girl and saw that her eyebrows were not bad. She had a long face and eyes that were as bright as water. The girl smiled in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. My name is Zhongli Zi. Just now, my younger sister yelled and screamed in front of the Crown Princess. It was her fault. I apologize to you. You are you, she is she. What he meant was, you don't need to apologize to me for her rudeness. She had always been a person who could clearly distinguish between kindness and hatred. She could clearly distinguish who was right and who was wrong. Arbor glanced at her indifferently, then turned and walked to Mo Lian's side. On this side, Crown Prince Mo was almost done cleaning up that pile of ores. He had Hua Tao and Ma Ta rinse off some of the ore crystals at the bottom, revealing a jade-like object. When Mo Lian saw this object, her eyes lit up. Heavenly water mithril. Shi Yongqian exclaimed. Chapter 2766. At the same time, a hand reached out from the side and abruptly snatched that piece of pitch-black heavenly water mithril. The newcomer was a man around 30 years old. His appearance was very mediocre, and his rat-like eyes emitted a shrewd light as if they were perpetually squinted. He held that piece of heavenly water mithril in his hand and couldn't resist shrieking in excitement. Heavenly water mithril, it's heavenly water mithril, ha 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 ha. I didn't expect that I could pick up a piece of heavenly water mithril in my lifetime. What are you doing? Hua Tao and the others glared angrily at that person and berated, put it down. This person was also a mercenary that had rolled out of the fish's stomach just now. However, he didn't look like a member of Dai, or mercenary group. As expected, Dai, frowned and said to the rat-eyed man in the next second, Deputy Commander Cheong, isn't it unkind of you to do this? All of us were rescued by these brothers. How can you be like this? Not only do you not repay them, but you also snatch their things. That man narrowed his rat-like eyes and sneered, it's useless even if you scream at the heavens when you pick up a treasure from the ground. At this time, Mo Lian had already put away the remaining items and walked to Miss Qiao's side. She glanced at her with an aggrieved expression. It was snatched. I wanted to use heavenly water mithril to forge a weapon for Hua Tao and Ma Ta. When Arbor heard that his companion's weapons were snatched, his gaze immediately turned unfriendly, and he glared coldly at that short-sighted man. Who are you? Big Brother Cheong. Shi Yongqian had already walked over in high spirits. Is Uncle Shi Lang here? Niece Yongqian. A laugh came from behind, and Shi Lang mercenary group's commander walked over. He had already finished cleaning up and was hiding behind a tree to change out of all his clothes. Compared to Zhongli Zi, who only changed her outerwear, his body was naturally much more refreshed. When Qiong Hao saw Shi Yongqian, he was like a mouse seeing rice. His rat-like eyes widened slightly as he beamed. Younger sister Yongqian. Earlier, he was completely focused on this heavenly water mithril and didn't even have time to snatch things, so how could he have noticed Shi Yongqian? Now that he saw the goddess in his heart, he was naturally very happy. However, the little stoic's cold words were like a basin of cold water that drenched him from head to toe. Put down the thing in your hand, or die. Shi Lang frowned, and the mercenaries behind him shouted in dissatisfaction, Miss, you're being too overbearing. That's right. You guys have already picked up so many ores. What's wrong with giving one to someone else? If it were anyone else, they might have given the items to them out of shame. However, the little stoic was expressionless and only asked coldly, are you handing it over or not? Xiong Hao's eyes flashed with anger. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Shi Yongqian tugging at his sleeve. This is the Crown Prince of Shenzhou and the Crown Princess. Xiong Hao's pupils constricted. Due to the other party's identity, he didn't dare to act rashly. Although the Shi Lang mercenary group was backed by the Shi family and had become a famous fifth-level mercenary group on the Divine Land, they could not afford to offend the Crown Prince of the Divine Land as long as they were in the Divine Land. On the side, Shi Lang was already a bit cowardly, and he hastily apologized with a smile, "Crown Princess, please don't be angry, heh. Xiong Hao is a blacksmith master. He was just, excited to see the heavenly water mithril and didn't have any other intentions." Chapter 2767. Although Xiong Hao was a bit unwilling, he truly didn't dare to contradict the Crown Prince and Crown Princess, so he could only reluctantly toss the heavenly fire mithril in his hand to Arbor. The little stoic glanced at them coldly and caught the heavenly fire mithril he tossed over. She said neutrally, "If someone else saved my life, not only would I not snatch their things, I would also properly repay them." In other words, you bunch of cowards are truly disgusting to the extreme. Although she didn't ask for repayment for saving people, it truly disgusted her to the core that they repaid her by snatching things. You. Xiong Hao was momentarily at a loss for words. However, Zhongli Jiwei had already woken up and couldn't resist shouting in an impassioned tone, "I don't think you intentionally wanted to save us. Aren't you just saving us in passing?" Why? Zhongli Zi, why are you gagging me? Apologies. Zhongli Zi turned around and nodded apologetically at Arbor's group. She then said to Zhongli Jiwei, "Can you stop yelling? Go behind the tree and clean yourself up. I'll keep an eye on you." Zhongli Jiwei looked at the mess of vomit on her body and screamed, "Ah!" She hastily hid behind the tree to clean herself up. Arbor couldn't be bothered with them anymore. She tugged at Prince Mo and said to Duan Yu and the others, "Let's go." When she arrived in front of that half-dead strange fish, she kicked it hard. "Why aren't you scramming yet? Was it waiting to be slaughtered and put into a pot?" The dead fish pitifully swayed its body and shrunk before hastily turning to flee. Its back looked a bit disheveled in the wind. Wasn't that so? Heaven took pity on it and threw up all the good stuff it had eaten for several hundred years. Not only was the strange fish hungry now, but its entire fat belly also deflated. "Wait! Don't go!" Zhongli Jiwei scuttled out from behind the tree and shouted, "You! How could you let it escape? What else are you going to do? Kill it!" Zhongli Jiwei roared angrily, "Who knows how many people this guy has eaten while squatting here? You! You're really, what a lunatic! How could he let it escape? So what if I eat people?" Xiao Mu gazed at her icily. What? Zhongli Jiwei widened her eyes in shock as if she was looking at a monster. She stared straight at Arbor. The little stoic coldly swept her a glance. "Other people are eating normally. Who told you to trespass on its territory? What a weird argument. Did the young Crown Prince Consort mean that the strange fish was quite innocent? Was it because these idiots had barged in and disturbed the strange fish's normal feeding?" Zhongli Jiwei's eyes widened in disbelief. She stared at her blankly for a long while before she couldn't help but scream, You can't let it go. Then go chase after them and kill them. What are you stopping me for, chirping and shrieking for?" Xiao Mu brusquely swept this brain-dead woman a glance. Zhongli Jiwei looked back, but she couldn't see the strange fish anymore. That strange fish originally possessed innate concealment skills. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to secretly swallow so many people at once. The main reason was that this strange fish knew how to conceal itself. In addition, it concealed itself and used the gale to attract people, so many people were foolishly tricked. In terms of actual combat strength, it was actually only at the normal level. If Arbor knew clearly, this strange fish should be a life-bound beast born with water. Chapter 2768. In fact, it was quite innocent. Arbor was right. In fact, this strange fish was very lazy. It had been squatting here for hundreds of years, eating, sleeping, and eating. It had not moved at all. If it wasn't for someone coming for the natural water, it would be impossible to walk into its sphere of influence and be sucked into its stomach. Now that it had disappeared in front of their eyes, as long as it hid on its own, they would never be able to find it in this lifetime. You! Zhongli Jiwei was so angry that she almost fainted. She pointed at the little crown princess with a trembling finger and said the word, "you," repeatedly, but she couldn't say anything else. Arbor glanced at her coldly. "You don't want your finger anymore, do you?" Zhongli Jiwei suddenly retracted her hand. She didn't realize that immediately retracting her hand was actually an instinctive physical reaction under her fear. She saw that this young crown prince consort's body and soul were screaming the word, "tremble." Get lost. Eating was an animal's instinct, so there was nothing wrong with it. Since it had spat out everything it had eaten, for Miss Chiao, this matter was considered settled. Whoever wanted to be righteous could continue to pursue the matter if they wanted to. She couldn't be bothered with these trivial matters. Zhongli Jiwei's body trembled and she hurriedly took 2 steps back. Zhongli Zi quickly held her back and shook her head helplessly. Madame Ma's daughter was arrogant and useless. She only knew how to make a fuss all day long. Not to mention that the crown princess hated her, even her sister, who had been with her for 20 years, couldn't stand her bad temper. Arbor didn't care about them at all. He pulled Mo Lien and called for his own people, and they went through the overgrown trees. Their eyes lit up slightly. Outside was a gloomy forest with towering ancient trees. Inside was an open space of less than 30 square meters. In the middle was a small pond, surrounded by lush herbs. At a glance, it was colorful and green. It was exceptionally beautiful. Master Silver, in front, in front. Dian Dian shouted excitedly. Xiao Mu knew that the natural water was right in front of her, so she hastily dashed forward, arriving in front of that small puddle. He saw a beautiful pink flower plant growing in the water. In the middle of the lustrous petals, there was a drop of sparkling water. It rolled around the petals against the breeze, but it did not fall. Gu Di. The water child swiftly squirmed out from between Xiao Mu's fingers, and it excitedly sucked in that water droplet with its mouth open. Swoosh! The natural water seemed to tremble, but under the powerful pressure of the holy water, it was sucked over without any resistance. It quickly merged with the water baby's transparent arm. The moment the light burst out, Arbor quickly took the water child into Paradise Planet. The pink plants in the puddle were dying at a speed visible to the naked eye. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly dug the plant out of the water and threw it into Paradise Planet. Ball, save it. Leave it to me, master. Qiu immediately responded. At the same time, Shi Yongqian and the others, who were blocked outside by Mata and Huatao, finally broke through the barrier and rushed in. They all exclaimed at once. Wow, so many herbs. Everyone scrambled to dig and shovel the plants around the puddle. They looked like a group of bandits entering a village. Their movements were so crude that Arbor's eyelids kept twitching. You guys. Qi Xian wanted to stop them, but Arbor raised his hand and stopped her. She had all these plants on Paradise Planet, so there was no need to fight over them. It was just a pity. Chapter 2769. After this herb field was excavated by these bandits in such a barbaric manner, the roots and soil were damaged. Not a single blade of grass would grow here in the future, and nothing would grow here anymore. What a pity for such a small spiritual land. This water, could it be spiritual water? A mercenary exclaimed softly. The group of people immediately threw away the herbs and swarmed toward the small pond, taking out bamboo tubes and other items to get water. A mercenary from the dire mercenary group bent down to taste the water and immediately exclaimed, "It really is spiritual water." Could it be that one of the 5 spirit origins, a high-level spiritual water, existed here? This puddle didn't look like it was formed in just a few years. It must have been formed by droplets of water vapor that filled this small puddle. From this, it could be seen that there was definitely a treasure here. Everyone glanced at Arbor suspiciously. After all, it was this little crown princess who had led people here first. If there was a water spirit origin, it would naturally have been taken by the little crown princess first. Some people were impatient and hurriedly jumped into the pond, searching for something in the mud. Arbor couldn't help but be speechless. She only stood to the side and didn't say anything. Looking at the plants that had been trampled by those people running back and forth, she felt a little pity. Unexpectedly, Arbor was a little absent-minded as she thought of her previous life. The paradise that had appeared on Hullen Mountain in Kwoto village had also been ruined like this. Fortunately, the paradise had been safely hidden away by her and was far away from the chaos of the world. It would never become a barren land again. When everyone rushed into the shallow pond, Qi Xianxian and the others didn't idle around either. They dug out some undamaged herbs nearby. However, no matter how fast the 7 of them dug, they couldn't compare to those boorish people. More than 100 people were squeezed into a small area of 30 square meters. Everyone was fighting to get to the bottom of the pond to fish out some good stuff. At this moment, suddenly, a faint, soft light shone from the bottom of the pond. A light green plant with 7 leaves leaped out of the pond and hastily flew toward Xiao Mu like it was fleeing for its life. One after another, a lot of colorful plants ran straight towards the little guy as if they were psychic. Everyone turned around, dumbfounded. That stoic face stood expressionlessly far away and didn't approach the edge of the puddle. However, the strange thing was that the vegetation at the bottom of the puddle turned into specks of flowing light and kept running toward her. This scene was simply amazing. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others all looked unperturbed. How could he not be calm? Jojo had the holy wood on him, so why would he need to rush forward and snatch it away like the others? She only had to stand there and let Qiuqiu give the order, and those divine herbs that had already gained sentience would naturally rush to her side. The wood spirit origin in her body was no joke. It was not a joke to say that plants had spirits. Those spirit herbs that had lived in this world for more than several hundred years weren't fools. Could it be that they would abandon their little master who possessed the holy wood spirit origin and follow a bunch of people who didn't understand medicine at all and looked at them like they were looking at piles of spirit coins? It was simply a reckless waste of God's good gifts. The group of young men from the Adele mercenary group were all dumbfounded. Who knew what was going on? Could it be that even plants knew what was good and bad these days and could even choose to follow their master? Chapter 2770. Zhongli Jiwei's heart was about to explode from anger when she saw this scene. She simply couldn't believe that even those naturally occurring plants actually knew how to curry favor with the rich and powerful and attach themselves to the rich and powerful. She felt more comfortable thinking this way. Otherwise, she simply couldn't explain why those plants would look down on them and insist on sticking to the crown princess. Although Zhongli Zi was also quite shocked, she wasn't like Zhongli Jiwei, whose entire face was contorted from jealousy. Zhongli Zi also didn't swarm over to that small pond and couldn't be bothered to fight over that bit of spirit water with others. There were more than 100 of them, and that pond of water was only enough for each person to drink a mouthful. It felt very strange to expend so much effort to snatch that mouthful of water. Shi Lang and Xiong Hao went to fill bamboo tubes with water, but they didn't manage to fill much and nearly got into a fight with Dai Er's mercenary group instead. Although Shi Lang was leading a 5th-rank mercenary group, the people he brought were far inferior to Dai Er's mercenary group. If the two sides fought now, Shi Lang's group would definitely suffer. However, no one was willing to give up this spirit water that was so easily obtainable. Both mercenary groups were unwilling to give way, so the situation was a bit deadlocked. On the other side, Qiuqiu calmed down after summoning the wind and summoning the rain and making the dozens of divine rank and above herbs hidden in the pond submit to it. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others were secretly amused when they carefully examined the little girl's expression. Although this little fellow didn't have any expression on her face, those familiar with her could tell that the little girl was currently very happy. However, no clues could be discerned from the stoic face. Shi Yongqian, who had been observing the little stoic from the side, couldn't help but say with a cold expression, "Before we barged in, this place seemed to be emitting a strange light." Shi Lang's heart jolted when he heard that, and his greedy eyes roamed over the little crown princess. He chuckled mischievously and said, "The crown princess was the first person to enter this area just now." When he said that, the others would definitely unite against a common enemy and become suspicious of Arbor. Xiao Mu had already had Qiuqiu put away the several dozen stalks of divine rank herbs. Upon hearing this, she looked up and scoffed at Shi Lang. "Just say what you want to say. Don't beat around the bush." Shi Lang's wrinkled face twitched slightly. "I'm sure the dire mercenary group knows about this. We have accepted a mysterious mission to search for natural water." Dai and Su Ha glanced at the old man and didn't say anything. Seeing that no one responded to him, Shi Lang's face darkened. "Dai, you guys are quite patient." The beautiful woman couldn't help but sneer. She simply crossed her arms and looked at him indifferently. "Shi Lang, you old fox, there's no need to provoke me with words. I'm not some inexperienced person. Your words of sowing discord, save them for later." Shi Lang chuckled, his eyes revealing a bit of anger. "This place is so hidden, and there's a strange fish in front of us guarding it. I don't believe you won't be suspicious. That strange fish must be a water-type life-bound beast. Natural water, 9th level spirit water." That destitute vice-commander beside Shi Lang immediately squinted his rat eyes into slits. His gaze scrutinized Xiao Mu's body back and forth, as if he wanted to see through her body and ascertain whether or not there was natural water in her body. Chapter 2771. Xiong Hao was a level 12 great spiritualist and controlled the 5th level of the water spirit. The natural water was more useful to him than anyone else. If he could obtain the natural water, he could comprehend it again. If he could comprehend a higher level of origin energy, he could make the 9th level spirit water replace the 5th level spirit water that he comprehended previously. In this way, his cultivation would definitely increase by 1 or 2 levels. Moreover, the effects of the 9th level spirit water and the 5th level spirit water in battle were naturally different. Even if they were both water spirits, the 5th level spirit water would have to submit to the 6th level spirit water, not to mention the 9th level spirit water. Of course, if he obtained the 9th level spirit water, his body would not be able to comprehend it. In that case, he could only hand over the 9th level spirit water to complete this secret mission. Anyway, no matter how bad it was, he would still be able to obtain abundant mission resources. But now, he didn't even see a single strand of the 9th level spirit water. According to his goddess Shi Yongqian, the 9th level spirit water should have been taken away by this stoic face in front of him. Xiong Hao swept a glance at Arbor without batting an eyelid, then turned his gaze to the 2 youths beside her whose cultivation he couldn't tell. These 2 youths didn't look like easy targets. However, the temptation of the 9th level spirit water was too great. Even though Xiong Hao felt that he might not be able to defeat the 2 youths in front of him, he couldn't resist the temptation of the 9th level spirit water. He couldn't help but say bluntly, "This is the crown princess, right? You were the one who put away the natural water just now." Xiong Hao's attitude was somewhat disrespectful. After all, he was a level 12 great spiritualist. When facing a mere level 3 little spiritualist, he didn't need to be too courteous. He could just ask whatever he wanted. Even if the other party was the Crown Princess of China, with his cultivation, he could completely crush her. Naturally, he didn't need to pay too much attention to what he said. Arbor naturally knew Qiong Hao's mentality. Because of the aura-concealing talisman, she was only a mere level 3 little spiritualist in the eyes of others. In Arbor's group, other than the 2 youths whose cultivation she couldn't tell, the others were all level 8 spiritualists and above. She was the only hilarious level 3 little spiritualist. Perhaps in the eyes of Qiong Hao and the others, Miss Chiao was just an extra in this group. It must have been Arbor's teammates who pulled them out of the monster fish's stomach. Qiong Hao's attitude was disrespectful, but Arbor didn't care. He glanced at him coldly and said coldly, "So what if you took it? So what if you didn't?" Qiong Hao didn't think that a mere level 3 spirit master would dare to speak like this in front of him. He couldn't help but look angry as he said, "If you took it, then spit it out. If you didn't take it, then prove to us that you don't have the 9th layer spirit water." Arbor chuckled. Qi Xianxian and the others couldn't help but twitch their eyebrows. Their little girl was a little angry. However, Qiong Hao and the others who were courting death did not know that. They continued to run wildly on the road of death. "Come here, I'll spit it out for you." Arbor narrowed his eyes and curled his finger at Qiong Hao. Qiong Hao glanced at her suspiciously, then looked behind her at the group of teammates who hadn't done anything. He couldn't help but sigh in relief. It seemed that his prediction was right. This little girl with a low cultivation level must be this group's escort. Chapter 2772. It didn't matter if she was there or not, so her teammates probably couldn't be bothered to care about her. Qiong Hao's gaze was somewhat disdainful. He actually gathered his courage and took a step forward, looking coldly at Arbor. "Where's the stuff?" An icicle suddenly shot towards his face. In the blink of an eye, Qiong Hao's expression froze as he hurriedly dodged to the side. His entire body flashed to the side in a panic as he formed a defensive circle with one hand. With a soft bang, the defensive layer in front of him was penetrated by the icicle in a matter of minutes. The sharp icicle arrived in front of his eyes with a whoosh, less than an inch away from his forehead. If it came any closer, his forehead would be completely pierced through by the icicle. Qiong Hao looked at the icicle that was inches away from him in shock. He took a deep breath and didn't dare to move his body. He froze on the spot. "Big brother Qiong!" Shi Yongqian cried out in alarm as she hastily flew to Qiong Hao's side. She reached out to support his arm before turning to shout at Xiaomu, "Crown Prince Consort, Big brother Qiong merely offended you with his words. Why did you have to be so ruthless? Hand over all the herbs you collected in the great forest of the north." Arbor said coldly. "Take out everything in your inner world until you prove that you don't have a single herb on you. If you have even one herb hair, I'll kill you." Arbor's fingers moved slightly, and the icicle in front of Qiong Hao moved a little closer. It was now completely close to Qiong Hao's forehead. The eerie coldness caused him to feel a piercing pain on his forehead. A smear of blood slowly flowed down from his forehead as the coldness seeped in. Dai, and the others couldn't help but smirk mockingly. They already knew that the little girl's methods were extraordinary. Her talisman could kill dozens of men in black in one go, much less a mere Qiong Hao. Dai's mercenary band and Shirlang's group had never been on good terms. Naturally, no one would specially remind Shirlang and Qiong Hao that the little girl was not to be trifled with. Seeing this scene, Dell and the others were even secretly laughing at this poor vice-commander. He thought that the other party was a rank 3 spirit master and thought that he could crush the other party, but in the end, he was crushed like a dog. You! Qiong Hao wanted to retreat, but he felt a force binding him. His body could not move at all. At this point, he clearly understood that he had kicked an iron plate. He couldn't help but force a smile as he spoke to Mo Yen, "Your Highness Crown Prince, it's understandable that you want to help the Crown Princess. But it's not good to secretly make a move like this. Even now, Cheung Hao still felt that the reason why he was so unlucky, unable to move his body and being restrained by the little crown princess so quickly, was definitely because of the crown prince, whose cultivation he couldn't see through, intervened. Prince Mo and Duan Yu disdainfully looked at Cheung Hao as if they were looking at an idiot. Would Miss Chiao need help from others? Stop joking, okay? They weren't so idle as to restrain a level 12 spirit master. This person had traveled outside for so many years, but he actually only talked about cultivation realm. Wasn't this a joke? He deserved to be so unlucky as to kick an iron plate. Enough nonsense. Arbor didn't need to explain. He drew a circle with his hand and icily said, "Are you handing it over or not? If you aren't, then die." Chapter 2773. Arbor didn't have the time to continue wasting time with Cheung Hao. She sensed that Lady Holy Water was about to level up after merging with the 9th layer of spirit water. She had to go into seclusion as well. If there were no accidents, she would also level up after merging with the 9th layer of spirit water. The little fellow frowned, looking impatient. Cheung Hao glanced at them from the corner of his eye. Seeing that even the leader of his mercenary group, Shi Lang, didn't say anything, no one else would help him. He couldn't help but feel a little angry. Shi Lang, on the other hand, couldn't help but laugh coldly in his heart. This Cheung Hao didn't take him seriously just because he was a level 12 great spiritual master. Shi Lang didn't like him for a long time. He had no sense of propriety at all. It was good that he suffered in the hands of others. Otherwise, he would be overly arrogant and think that his position as the leader was just for show. Cheung Hao's eyes revealed his unwillingness, but he couldn't help but soften his tone. You're imprisoning me. How can I take things? Arbor reached out and gently pushed, and the sharp icicle that was originally pressing against Cheung Hao's forehead retreated. Cheung Hao suddenly realized that he could move. While he sighed in relief, a trace of murderous intent appeared in his eyes. Suddenly, a ferocious beast pounced from behind Cheung Hao. It opened its huge mouth and bit at Arbor. Hiss. The little white snake on Arbor's wrist began to coil and swim. Suddenly, a snake head popped out. In an instant, part of the snake's head enlarged, revealing its eerie fangs. It stared coldly at the ferocious beast that didn't look like anything. It opened its mouth and twisted the beast's head off. Blood splattered everywhere. It was chilling. Ah! Shi Yongqian was so scared that her face turned pale. She fell on her butt. She stared at the huge snake head that swam in front of her in shock. Her eyes were filled with shock. She shuffled her butt and retreated. She even cried out, don't eat me, don't eat me." The little white snake had no interest in biting this woman's stinky head. It retracted its huge head and once again coiled itself into a thin bracelet. It gently slithered around Miss Chiao's wrist before calming down. This unforeseen event caused everyone in this area to stop what they were doing and look dumbfoundedly at Xiao Mu. Oh my god, this is the spirit beast that killed Cheung Hao in 1 second. While everyone was shocked, they couldn't help but sympathize with Cheung Hao's suffering. Ah! Cheung Hao, who had suffered from the backlash of the spirit beast's death, suffered greatly. How could he have expected that his ferocious beast would be swallowed by the giant snake before it could even take the girl's head with its mouth? Xiao Mu's eyes revealed a chilly glint, and she raised her hand. Her voice was so frigid that it was as if she had been scooped out of icy water. Die. No matter what the reason was, those who had the intention to kill her could only die. It was originally a small matter, but this person's attitude was bad and he yelled at her. She could just let him suffer and kick an iron plate. But now, this person wanted to take her by surprise and release his spirit beast to bite her to death. His heart was filled with malice toward her. Even if she let him go now, he wouldn't stop and would definitely seek revenge in the future. Since that was the case, then she would eliminate the source of trouble and leave no traces. Since Arbor wanted to kill this person, even if the Heavenly Emperor came to save him, he would still kill him. Chapter 2774. Seeing several icicles simultaneously stabbing towards Cheung Hao's head, Shi Lang hastily shouted, "Have mercy." What a joke. If Cheung Hao died like this, their mercenary group's overall strength would definitely drop by another level. A 5th-rank mercenary group like theirs only had 7 to 8 level, 12 great spiritual masters. Now that one of them had inexplicably perished here, Shi Lang was naturally unwilling. He pulled out the daggers at his waist and abruptly flashed in front of Cheung Hao, nimbly blocking those icicles for him. Arbor's gaze hardened, and she flung out several thunder spirit talismans, which abruptly exploded above the two people's heads. At the same time, she swiftly flicked out several silver needles, which streaked across like streams of water. Cheung Hao, who had just barely propped himself up, was caught off guard by these silver needles. His body shuddered, and he collapsed to the ground. Ah! Cheung Hao only felt the spiritual energy in his body rushing out of his body, colliding chaotically in his spirit meridians and roaming everywhere in an extremely disorderly manner. Arbor summoned the startled swan dagger from her conscious. Just as she was about to finish him off, she suddenly moved and quickly grabbed Mo Lien's hand with a backhand. Her expression changed slightly as she exclaimed, "Seclusion, seclusion." Mo Lien was taken aback, and he couldn't help but panic when he saw her complexion turn snow-white all of a sudden. However, he quickly calmed down and picked her up, dashing towards the depths of great north-facing forest without another word. When Duan Yu and the others saw this, they quickly followed. The Zhangzhou attendants involuntarily called out in panic, "Your Highness, Your Highness." How could they keep up with these big shot speed? Go to Wind Thunder City and wait. Duan Yu transmitted back from afar, but he had already gone far away. The group of people quickly found a tree hole and settled Miss Qiao down. Mo Lien then dragged Duan Yu along to lay down a double-layered defensive boundary in the surrounding area. In view of the little girl's previous earth-shattering advancements, Mo Lien sensed that the little girl's commotion this time wouldn't be too small. In the next few days, they accompanied Arbor to silently meditate and cultivate here. Arbor was looking inside his Dantian star field, looking at the main star that suddenly flashed. The fish orchid star was the only star that was lit up among the 4 stars surrounding the main star. Now, all the spiritual energy in his body was surging toward a yellow auxiliary star beside it. Arbor was a little excited, thinking that this star was about to open. She guessed that once all 4 stars were activated, the main star would most likely be activated. According to Qiuqiu, she had collected a lot of resources in the past and dumped them all on this main planet. Just thinking about it made him feel a little smug. He didn't know what kind of surprises this main planet would bring her. The specks of light in the star field all rose up. After a burst of blinding light, the mystic domain suddenly opened and absorbed large amounts of spirit energy from the surroundings. Arbor's sharp eyes caught a glimpse of something in the depths of the mystic domain. It didn't seem to be spiritual energy. It flashed brightly for a moment before sinking down. What was it? Before she could continue pondering, the mystic domain closed up again and concealed itself in the sapling's roots, endlessly absorbing the spiritual energy of all living things in the world. She could only collect all her thoughts and seal her 5 senses before rapidly drawing in her divine perception to guide the spiritual energy and temper her muscles and bones. After several days like this, most of the spiritual energy in the great north-facing forest gathered here and condensed into a swirling vortex. Sha Ji star opened. Arbor opened her eyes, and it seemed like there were stars spinning in her eyes. Chapter 2775. Practically all the spiritual energy in the sky above northward Great Forest was sucked dry. The passing experiential teams looked up at the sky, completely at a loss for what was going on. They probably wanted to find the source of the depletion of spiritual energy. After wandering around nearby, they discovered a large-scale defensive formation protecting a corner of the forest. Some busybodies wanted to barge in to see what was going on, but it was useless no matter how they barged in. It would be a joke if Mo Lien and Duan Yu's dual defensive boundary could allow people to barge in so easily. After several days like this, the experiential teams discovered that the spiritual energy inside Northward Great Forest had formed a large-scale vortex above this defensive boundary. Like a dragon sucking in water, it formed a whirlwind that sucked in all the spiritual energy from all directions with a whoosh. It actually sucked in all the spiritual energy inside Northward Great Forest in a matter of minutes, leaving nothing behind. What was even more frightening was that this ferocious sucking force actually intended to spread to the periphery of Northward Great Forest within a radius of 50 kilometers. Everyone cursed inwardly, fuck, fuck, fuck. What kind of freak was cultivating and advancing here? Could it be that she was advancing to the divine realm? Where was the five spirits' reincarnation tribulation? Why was there neither heavenly lightning nor heavenly fire covering it? Such a freak was not tolerated in this world. Shouldn't the five spirits' origin blast her to death? Arbor slowly opened her eyes, and there seemed to be shattered stars swirling in the depths of her eyes. Like a deep vortex, it could completely drag people into the abyss. After a long while, the remnant spiritual energy above her head gradually dissipated. Only then did Arbor stand up and move her small hands and feet, hopping a few times on the spot. Jojo, Mo Lien and the others, who had been on tenterhooks for several days, quickly gathered around when they heard her voice. They stared unblinkingly at this energetic little girl before them. Arbor's hopping hands and feet stiffened slightly, and she expressionlessly stopped all her movements. Everyone's mouths secretly twitched, and they all suppressed the urge to laugh. Prince Mo coughed lightly and asked seriously, Jojo, your advancement went smoothly, right? Of course it went smoothly. Duan Yu and the others all gave him a disdainful look that said, you're trying to find something to talk about. Miss Chiao nodded solemnly. It's all right. Although her cultivation had only increased by one realm, she had entered the level 11 initial success realm of Spirit Master. However, what made him excited was not the growth of his cultivation base. Instead, it was the opening of planet Shaji. Little Watery Spot had entered the early stage of growth. In addition, her divine sense had also advanced to the next level. She had now entered divine sense level 2. Her spirit chapter, which hadn't been upgraded for a long time, had also improved. Now, her spirit division record spirit chapter had broken through to the 8th level, and her spirit meridians had formed an 8th branch meridian. However, to Xiao Mu, all of this was not important. The main point of this advancement was that her mystic ruin realm had finally grown to the spiritual ruin realm. One had to know that before this, her Dantian's mystic domain did not change much. After all, under the protection of the sapling, her Dantian's mystic domain was different from that of ordinary people. Its capacity was at least 8 to 10 times larger than that of ordinary mystic cultivators. Therefore, even though her realm had advanced to the spiritual ruin realm, her Dantian's mystic domain had not changed much. Now, however, her Dantian's mystic domain had completely changed. From the original olive-sized mystic domain, it had evolved to the current spiritual ruin realm that was the size of a toddler's fist. The capacity of this spiritual ruin realm to store spirit energy was definitely more than 10 times greater than before. Chapter 2776. Miss Chiao looked at everyone expressionlessly. Little Fatty could not help but chuckle. Stop pretending, Jojo. Everyone can see the excitement in your eyes. What are you laughing at? The others immediately turned around and chuckled at Little Fatty. Little Fatty looked at his hypocritical teammates with a dumbfounded expression. When these people turned around, they put on solemn faces again and nodded at Xiao Mu. It's good that you've successfully advanced. Arbor pursed her lips and calmly replied, Everyone suddenly felt that they could not continue chatting with this child. Several pairs of eyes looked at Crown Prince Mo, who was grinning brilliantly. Prince Mo quickly went forward and held Arbor's hand. Jojo, are you hungry? Do you want to eat something before we continue? Arbor lowered her head and looked at her small body. She felt as if she was stinking to the heavens. She had not bathed for a few days, and this man was still holding her hand. She felt as if she was stinky. Her exceptionally bright eyes flashed. Let me bring you to a place. Everyone was curious. In the next instant, everything in front of them changed. Everyone landed in a vast desert. Looking at the boundless desert with yellow sand dancing in the air, everyone's gaze changed slightly. Oh my God, this is... Qi Xianxian opened her mouth in shock. A place like the ocean? Arbor nodded her head, a trace of joy in her eyes. She did not move, but sand and dust rolled over from the end of the desert. It was not until they got closer that they discovered, to their horror, that countless large and small sand scorpions were crawling over from the end of the desert in a neat formation like an army. They all stopped a few feet away from them. Qi Xianxian shuddered. Damn, if these little things crawled over and surrounded them, no matter how many people there were, they would not be enough to swallow them. There were more than these things in the desert. There were snakes, insects, rats, and ants. There was an endless amount of fun to be had. Arbor stretched out her hand, and a strangely shaped cactus fell into her hand. This is a common spirit plant. Arbor explained, then threw the cactus into the air. Instantly, the countless spikes on the cactus all left its body and shot toward them. In this desert, Arbor's existence was like a god. These things could not hurt her at all. When the cactus was a foot away from them, all the spikes fell from the sky and were swept away by the yellow sand. Little Fatty and the others' hearts only relaxed after a while. When they turned to look at Arbor, they could not help but feel excited. Jojo, you're too amazing. Do you have any spirit plants that we can use? After thinking it over, Xiao Mu activated her divine conscience, and several pieces of sand brambles landed in her hand. This is for you guys. Everyone curiously reached out to take it. They saw that it was covered with thorns and thorns. When they held it in their hands, the thorns were very soft and did not prick them at all. After Arbor used her divine sense to tame these spirit plants, she could distribute them to everyone. It was very simple and did not require them to contract anything. Even if they lost it and it fell into someone else's hands, it would be useless to them. Chapter 2777. The little fatty held the sand bramble in his hand and flicked his wrist. With a smack, he left a bright trail in the desert, and all the hidden thorns on the sand bramble flew out with a whoosh. With a thought, those hidden thorns flew back from all directions and attached themselves to the bramble. Little Fatty was a little dumbfounded by what he saw. These bramble thorns can be recycled. Xiao Mu nodded her small head. Keep it well. Perhaps it will have some unexpected effect at a crucial moment. Any fire below level 7 spirit fire can't burn it. Okay. Everyone happily put away the sand bramble. Duan Yu and Mo Yen also thought it was a bit fun, so they also took a section. Is the flow of time here the same as on Fish Orchid Planet? Arbor nodded. Yes. She was already thinking about whether she should transfer Huang He here. At that time, she could explode cauldrons and explode wherever she went while refining pills. It wouldn't be a problem at all. Fairy Huang He, who was diligently refining pills on an uninhabited island on Fish Orchid Planet, inexplicably shuddered and sneezed. Huang He, so strange. Why do I have a bad premonition? Arbor ran back to the treehouse on Paradise Planet and dug a hole. She filled it with water and took a comfortable bath before instructing the sapling to bury the hole. She returned to the treehouse and changed into a clean set of clothes before leaving the star domain with everyone. We have to hurry. The little fatty covered his face and said, tomorrow is March 15th. In other words, if they didn't hurry, they might really miss the registration test. Arbor quickly said, then let's set out. Duan Yu nodded. Just as he was about to withdraw the defensive barrier, he saw a hothead foolishly crash into it through the transparent barrier. They could hear his thump even through the barrier. Everyone looked to the heavens in exasperation. This hothead crawled up from the ground and leaped up, jumping more than 20 feet off the ground. The little fatty and the rest couldn't help covering their eyes. With a dong sound, the man hit the barrier again. Then, he slid down from above and rolled to the ground. The young man patted his butt and stood up. He stood outside the enchantment and only knew that he was being obstructed. He couldn't see who was inside. With a puzzled expression, he stretched out his finger and flicked the barrier in front of him. The little stoic walked over and looked at this young man through the boundary. She was not bad looking. Her eyebrows were exquisite, and she looked a little familiar. Isn't this Qin Jiu? Duan Yu speechlessly twitched his mouth when he recognized him. Their defensive barrier had been set up here for several days. Even a fool would know that they had to go around it. Do you think you can fly out of the range of the defensive barrier just because you can fly high? What a joke. Let alone a group of spiritual realm cultivators. Even a divine realm expert would have to weigh whether or not they would suffer a backlash if they were to forcefully break open the defensive boundary that Duan Yu and Mo Lien had set up at the same time. The little stoic creased her brows, and the corners of her lips had already unconsciously drooped. Her mood probably soured when she heard the surname Qin. Why is there a defensive barrier here? That dunce muttered to himself. Such a powerful barrier. Even I can't pass through it. This person ran a few steps along the defensive barrier and channeled all the spiritual energy in his body to charge forward. Qi Xianxian gaped at him like she was looking at an idiot. Chapter 2778. Bam! Sure enough, this person came into close contact with the defensive barrier again. Everyone could see that the guy's head was bruised from knocking against the defensive barrier, and his forehead was clearly a bit swollen. It was obvious how much force he used to knock against the barrier just now. Is he an idiot? Qi Xianxian turned to look at the little fatty. The latter nodded in all seriousness, giving her a very definite answer. Duan Yu speechlessly twitched his mouth, and he waved his hand to remove a layer of the defensive barrier. Crown Prince Mo also dispelled his own defensive boundary. Ninth Qin was rubbing the bump on his forehead, planning to knock against the barrier again, when he suddenly realized that several figures had appeared before him. He blinked, and his mouth turned into an O in shock. Who are you people? Aren't you that Duan Yu from the Duan clan? I once met this person on Sikong planet. Duan Yu expressionlessly explained to his companions that he wasn't familiar with this person. Knowing this kind of dunce was simply shameful and lowered his level. What, this and that? Who are the two of us? Why are we so distant? Did you forget, we are good friends? Ninth Qin complained in dissatisfaction. Duan Yu, did you forget that very meaningful half a month we spent together? Why did his words sound a bit when everyone heard this? They all looked oddly at Duan Yu, who appeared calm on the surface but had a complete mental breakdown on the inside. Seeing Sir Jojo's strange gaze sweeping over, Duan Yu hastily declared seriously, Jojo, don't listen to his nonsense. I'm not familiar with him. Not familiar with what? Ninth Qin instantly panicked. We even slept in the same bed at that time. Qi Xianxian and the others widened their eyes in shock and used a thought-provoking gaze to look at Duan Yu strangely, scanning him from head to toe. Duan Yu inexplicably shuddered. Why did it feel like everyone was looking at him as if he was a homosexual? Prince Mo mischievously raised his hand to pat Duan Yu's shoulder without a word. With an, I understand your pain, expression, He reached out to pull Jojo into his arms and hastily distanced himself from Duan Yu and Qin Jiu. The two of you are still young and will face many things in the future. However, you must be firm in the path you want to take and keep going. Prince Mo gave them this advice. Xiao Mu's gaze towards them became even stranger. No, Jojo, don't listen to that punk Mo Lian's nonsense. Duan Yu scratched his head. A man likes another man. What's that called again? The little girl asked in a low voice. So manly, so homosexual, Crown Prince Mo muttered secretly. The people of the Qin estate are all perverts. The little girl bluntly scolded, from top to bottom, if they're not perverts, then they're sickly people. It must be him pestering Duan Yu. Duan Yu is so pitiful, he's actually being targeted by a pervert. The little girl stomped in front of Duan Yu and patted him hard. Don't be scared, I'll save you. I absolutely won't let a pervert pester you. She understood the pain of being pestered by a pervert. She definitely wouldn't let her friend follow in her footsteps. Mo Lian was flabbergasted. There was something wrong with this scene. Shouldn't Sir Jojo stay away from the gay Duan Yu? Why was she walking over herself with a comforting expression? What kind of train of thought was this? Why was it different from other people's? Duan Yu was also stupefied and couldn't react for a while. Chapter 2779. Duan Yu couldn't help chuckling when he finally reacted. He nodded repeatedly and said, okay, okay. Prince Mo couldn't help but speechlessly roll his eyes. This punk really knew how to hit a snake with a stick and take advantage of the situation to play the victim. As he spoke, Duan Yu even looked up and glared at Prince Mo, who was secretly up to mischief just now. Beside him, Qin Jiu cried out in displeasure, "Hey, little lady, what are you saying? What did she mean by being pestered by a pervert? The pervert she was referring to couldn't be him, right? Also, don't think he didn't hear the little lady berating the entire Qin estate just now, right? What did she mean by the Qin family was either a pervert or a sickly invalid? How was this appropriate?" Qin Jiu fumed as he glared at Arbor. He saw that the little lady's bright eyes were very pretty, but when she looked at him, they were icy and lifeless. Who did he offend? Qin Jiu couldn't help but want to bicker with her. Wait, whose family is this little lady from? Jojo, don't listen to his nonsense. Duan Yu felt that he needed to salvage his handsome image in front of Jojo. The reason I know this guy is entirely due to an accident, an ill-fated relationship. At that time, I was still in Daybreak sect and went out to train once, Duan Yu quickly explained in a few words. It turned out that when he went out to train with his sect members, he accidentally entered a bewildering fog forest and was trapped inside for more than half a month. At that time, Qin Jiu ran out alone to train and also entered this bewildering fog forest. He tossed and turned inside for more than a month until he bumped into Daybreak sect's training team. He was extremely bored and had nothing to do by himself. The main reason was that he wasn't smart enough to break the formation and leave, so he followed Daybreak sect's Duan Yu and the others. Hey, then didn't we squeeze onto a stone bed to sleep at that time? Duan Yu rolled his eyes at him. Scram. The little stoic couldn't be bothered with him and directly turned to call Duan Yu, let's go. Youth Qin Jiu was baffled, and he hastily chased after them, shouting, wait a moment. Duan Yu, what's going on? What do you mean what's wrong? Can't you see that Jojo, Sama doesn't like you? Duan Yu grumpily rolled his eyes at him. She's not familiar with you. Yes, I'm not familiar with you. Arbor nodded and pulled Qi Xianxian to stand in front of Qin Jiu. He blocked all the male teammates in the team to the back with an expression of protecting a little chick. Qin Jiu couldn't help but feel a little angry. You're not looking at me with that look on your face, are you? Why did he feel that the young lady in front of him was looking at a pervert? Fuck off. Arbor snapped. Stay away from my teammates. Qin Jiu immediately felt wronged. How did I offend you? Arbor's expression froze for a moment. He thought about it and agreed. She couldn't possibly dislike her just because she was a member of the Qin family. The Qin estate's expression changed upon hearing this. Didn't that mean that she was actually afraid of the Qin estate? Arbor creased his brows and tried his best to use a mild tone to spit out, "Scram. Mo Lien, Duan Yu," and the others couldn't help but twitch their mouths. Why was this little fellow so funny? It was even more hilarious for her to use such a mild tone to speak, "All right." Qin Jiu still wanted to say something, but the little fatty was already shouting, "Let's go quickly, we won't make it in time." "Hey, are you guys also going to the Royal Academy? Let's go together." Chapter 2780. But who would be with him? Arbor and his group left the young man behind and hurriedly rushed towards Wind Thunder City. Fortunately, Arbor released the blazing blood fire phoenix to clear the way. The journey was very smooth and no spirit beasts dared to come close to their deaths. In addition, Arbor gave everyone a flying talisman. If they could fly, they would fly for a while. If they couldn't fly, they would use their spiritual energy to run. After rushing for a day and a night, they finally arrived at the gates of Wind Thunder City in the evening of the second day. At this time, there were only a few people passing by the city gates. When the city guards saw their group, they hurriedly waved at them and shouted, "Are you entering the city? Hurry, it's the last 15 minutes, the city gates are about to close." After leaving the north-facing Great Forest, Arbor and his group used the flying talisman to fly directly to the city gates. In the eyes of others, their cultivation was definitely unfathomable. They used their spiritual energy to fly the entire way. How much spiritual energy did they consume? "Hey big brother, let me ask you. We are going to the royal school to take the test, where do we go after entering the city?" Qi Xianxian asked. "Ah. You guys came so late." The city guard was also a chatterbox and warm-hearted person. When he heard this, he hurriedly told them everything he knew. The academy teachers were at the main academy street early in the morning to test the students. "You guys came too late, the others are about to pack up their stalls and return to the academy. Can we still take the test?" The little fatty hurriedly asked. Yes, quickly enter the city. If the city gates are closed and you can't enter, our Wind Thunder City won't be able to take the test." The big brother hurriedly urged them, "Come in, quickly. You guys didn't use your spiritual energy to fly all the way here after leaving the north-facing Great Forest, right?" The big brother looked at them with admiration and said, "Actually, at the exit of the north-facing Great Forest, there is a teleportation talisman array that can reach our gates directly. Why didn't you see it at that time? There was a student from our Wind Thunder City standing there to guide you. 100 spirit coins per trip, it is a bit expensive, but you guys didn't have enough time. Under special circumstances, you don't need to save money, right?" Everyone couldn't help but laugh. Arbor turned to look at Qi Xianxian as though he was looking at a weirdo. Qi Xianxian couldn't help but rub her nose and silently shut her mouth. In fact, 3 hours ago, when they had just exited the entrance of the north-facing Great Forest, they had indeed seen a dark-skinned young man waving at them, beckoning them over. Darling Qiao was very curious. She originally wanted to walk over to see what that brat was doing, but Qi Xianxian insisted on holding her back. Qi Xianxian kept telling her, "That person doesn't seem to have good intentions. He must be here to sell something. Otherwise, why would he be standing at the exit so sneakily?" Everyone was speechless as they entered the city, and the big brother said, "Close the city gates." As the winch was lowered bit by bit, the suspension bridge in front also rose. He heard a voice that sounded like it was in the wind. "Wait for me, wait for me." Light and shadow flashed at the gate. Qin Jiu hastily ran out of the transportation talisman formation and rushed towards the city gate. Almost at the same time he slid through the gate sideways, the city gate closed tightly. The guard's mouth twitched. Young man, you're in too much of a hurry. You're all going to the Imperial School to take the test, right? Hurry up. Before the big brother could finish speaking, he saw that young man speedily catch up with the group of people in front. Chapter 2781. Thankfully, there was a transportation talisman matrix at the entrance of north-facing forest. Otherwise, even if they summoned their spirit beasts, they probably wouldn't be able to reach the city gates in such a short time. Qin Jiu thought. Duan Yu, that black-hearted bunch, didn't wait for him to leave with them. Qin Jiu ran out of north-facing forest nearly 4 hours later than Arbor's group. And this was because Arbor's group was leading the way for him, so his journey was very smooth. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have made it in time today. The time was indeed a bit too rushed. Qin Jiu wiped his cold sweat and ran to Duan Yu's group with large strides. He shouted, "Hey, students, wait for me. Since we're all on the same path, then let's walk together." The youth followed them with a friendly face. Seeing that no one paid attention to him, he didn't feel awkward at all and continued to run with the group. Arbor's group didn't bother to care whether he followed them or not. There was only one path leading to Main Academy Street, so they couldn't possibly stop him. At this time, it was already very late, and night was about to fall. From afar, everyone saw that there were a dozen or so spectators standing sparsely on Main Academy Street's plaza, but there were only 2 or 3 examinees left. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Since there were still people taking the test, it meant that they didn't miss the time. The little fatty dashed forward and arrived at the table set up in the plaza. He said to a middle-aged instructor, "Hello. We're here to take the test." That middle-aged instructor creased his brows and glanced at him indifferently. "What time is it now and you're still here to take the test? Some students are just so opinionated. Do you think the instructors must sit here 24 hours a day and wait for you to take the test? Since you don't value this entrance test so much, then why did you come to Wind Thunder City?" The little fatty was flabbergasted. He didn't expect that his first sentence would incur this middle-aged instructor's dissatisfied and angry rebuke. What kind of outrageous thing did he do? "It's not that, instructor, something happened on the way. Time is in your hands. Shouldn't you have considered the uncertain factors that might happen on the way beforehand?" The middle-aged instructor said coldly, "You actually rushed to Wind Thunder City at this time? Do you guys still care about this entrance test? You guys are not taking the entrance test seriously." The little fatty stuttered and scratched his head anxiously. "No, teacher, what's wrong?" A faint voice came from the side. Little fatty and the middle-aged tutor turned around at the same time and saw a man without any hair on his head. He looked rather dignified as he walked over. When the middle-aged man saw this person, he stood up respectfully and cupped his hands. "Director Qi." Qi Duo nodded indifferently. His gaze swept over the little fatty and the others. "Our testing time is up. You're too late." Qin Jiu immediately panicked when he heard this. He squeezed forward and shouted, "What?" The invitation said that the test would be held today, March 15th, but it didn't say when it would end. "What makes you think we're late?" Little fatty immediately nodded, feeling that this young man's words were quite reasonable. "That's right. Teacher, we rushed in before the city gates closed. I didn't miss the test deadline." Chapter 2782. When the middle-aged instructor saw that these little turnips actually dared to make a ruckus at Director Qi Duo, he was immediately enraged. "What are you doing? You think you're in the right even though you're late?" The middle-aged instructor said angrily, "Hurry up and leave, don't cause trouble. If you dare to be disrespectful to our director again, I'll chase all of you out of Wind Thunder City." "Hey, don't be unreasonable." The little fatty couldn't help but shout, "We're not late, okay? Your invitation letter said that it's on March 15th, are you looking for trouble?" The middle-aged instructor roared, and two guards who were in charge of maintaining order immediately jumped out from behind him, revealing their strong arms, looking as if they were about to fight. The little fatty glared at them angrily, and stuttered when he was nervous, can you be a little more reasonable? Fatty, don't talk nonsense with them, come back. Qi Xianxian shouted in annoyance, if they don't take the test, then so be it. Who cares? That won't do. Qin Zhou shouted, we're already here, how can we not take the test and go back with our tails between our legs? How embarrassing would that be? Wouldn't those people in the Qin estate laugh to death? Originally, he had already been ostracized during this period of time when he returned home. If he didn't make it in time for the test this time, who knew what kind of dog he would be? He couldn't go back like this. Qi Xianxian thought about it and agreed. They couldn't go back either, otherwise, who knew how those noble ladies in the imperial capital would mock and ridicule them? She didn't care, but what was hateful was that those women would definitely gossip in front of Jojo, mocking and ridiculing them incessantly. What right did their family's baby Qiao have to be mocked behind his back? They definitely couldn't go back. Qi Xianxian, Lu Yu, and the others stepped forward simultaneously and said, this instructor, isn't the test not over yet? Aren't those students taking the test now? If they said that they missed the test, what would they say? The middle-aged instructor glared at them angrily, do you know how long the others waited in line? The others waited in line for a full 2 to 4 hours before it was their turn. Hey, according to what you're saying, the importance we place on the Academy's test is based on how many hours we've queued up for. We just happened to arrive at the right time. There weren't many people in the queue, and it was almost our turn. Don't tell me that this kind of coincidence is not taking the Academy's test seriously. It was truly hilarious. That was indeed the attitude of the middle-aged instructor. Everyone else had started lining up early in the morning to take the test. Other than a few special talents, everyone else had to line up for 2 to 4 hours. Why did these little radish heads clamor about wanting to take the test as soon as they entered the city? This was too pleasing for them. What do you think? Xiao Mu's expression chilled, and no one could tell whether she was happy, angry, or sad on her delicate stoic face. However, everyone could sense that a terrifying storm seemed to be in the midst of brewing. The middle-aged tutor was provoked by her attitude and couldn't help but sneer. So what if it's unexpected? You bunch of students, it's your own fault for being late and missing the test time. How dare you threaten the teachers? You're too long-winded. Arbor coldly interrupted his words and looked him up and down. Shut up. After saying that, she waved her small hand slightly and sprinkled a formless and colorless powder. The middle-aged tutor opened his mouth in shock, but he couldn't make a sound. Chapter 2783. His expression was a bit contorted, and he reached out to touch his throat. His face instantly flushed red from suffocation. Why was there no sound all of a sudden? What did you do? The guards behind that tutor hastily rushed forward and glared at the little stoic. He's too noisy, Arbor said coldly. I just made him shut up. You. The guards still wanted to say something, but Arbor's stern shout drowned out their voices. Do you guys also want to shut up? The guards were intimidated by her aura, and their hearts abruptly skipped a beat. The words they were about to say were inexplicably stuck in their throats. That bald-headed and serious-looking Chi Duo director had already walked forward and raised his hand to make the guards retreat. Take out your invitation letter. Without another word, Xiao Mu flicked out that golden invitation letter from her fingers and threw it at this director's face. Prince Mo twitched his mouth slightly. He knew that this little fellow was already impatient to the extreme. If something else happened, the little fellow would immediately turn around and leave, disinclined to be long-winded with him. Director Chi Duo's expression was a bit unsightly, and he raised his hand to block that invitation letter. When he saw that it was a pure gold invitation letter, a strange glint flashed through his eyes, and his gaze immediately landed on the little Stoics group. "Oh, so you guys are the students that Dean Yun personally invited. No wonder they dared to be so arrogant." It turned out they thought they had Dean Yun's support. This Director Chi Duo was Vice Dean Yun's subordinate and was somewhat at odds with that Dean Yun. Although the Dean and Vice Dean both came from the Yun family, they didn't have a good relationship. The director didn't show it on his face, but he couldn't help but criticize inwardly. The Dean personally invited them, so it wouldn't be good to make things difficult for them. However, he's letting them pass so easily. Don't tell me he doesn't want face. When the middle-aged tutor on the side saw the pure gold invitation letter Arbor flung over, he also widened his eyes in shock. He raised his hand to rub his eyes and sized up Arbor in confusion. They were actually holding an invitation letter from Dean Yun. Why didn't he say so earlier? Even the invitation letter from Principal Yun could exempt them from the entrance examination. Chi Duo glanced at them indifferently and said to Arbor, "All right then, come with me for the test." He turned around and led them to a few giant stone tablets in front of the square. He pointed at the stone tablets and said, "These testing tablets are called the Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow testing tablets. When ordinary people come to take the test, they will naturally use the yellow rank testing monument. However, since you were invited by Principal Yun, you are naturally different." Chi Duo said lightly. "Use Heaven rank." In the past 100 years of Wind Thunder City, no one had been able to pass the Heaven rank testing monument. "This time, I'll let you little girls and brats drink a pot of wine properly." Generally, the 5th to 6th level of the 5 spirits origins would use the yellow level testing tablet. If one were to forcefully use the profound rank testing steel, if one were to be unlucky, they would suffer a backlash from their spirit energy. It was even possible for them to be severely injured or crippled. Therefore, there was no need to think about lying in front of the testing monument. If he really wanted to put on an act, then he would have to bear the consequences. As for the Heaven rank testing monument, usually, people who had reached the 9th level of the 5 spirits origins wouldn't dare to use it. There was once a student with the 9th level of the spirit wood who used it. In the end, he suffered a backlash and was deprived of the spirit wood's origin. From then on, a genius became a good-for-nothing. The loss outweighed the gain. Chi Duo looked at Arbor maliciously. Chapter 2784. He had a provocative look on his face, which meant, "Do you dare to take the test on the Heaven-level testing monument?" Arbor glanced at him coldly. How could she not know that these people were waiting for a good show? Are all the teachers in the famous royal school like this? Then it's fine if you don't take the test. Arbor said coldly and mocked him without holding back. Chi Duo and the middle-aged teachers' faces turned red. "Little girl, you're wrong." A laugh came from behind the crowd. A man in a white robe walked over slowly. He was tall and had a calm temperament. Time had left traces on his face, but he still looked elegant and noble. "Principal. Principal." Chi Duo and the guards around him bowed respectfully. Regardless of what Chi Duo was thinking, he was still very respectful to the principal. Yun Piaomiao glanced at them and nodded. She turned to Arbor and said with a smile, "Little guy, you're the one who received the invitation letter from me, right? You're called Arbor, right?" Yun Piaomiao smiled and said, "You probably don't know, but those who received the invitation letter from the principal don't need to take the test. You can just go to the school directly." Realization dawned on Xiao Mu and the others, and their gazes simultaneously turned toward the bald director. Seeing his unsightly expression, everyone could not help but laugh in their stomachs. Wasn't this director slapping his face? How comfortable would it be to be slapped in the face by your own principal? Director Chi Duo couldn't help but cough lightly and said in a low voice, "It's my fault, I forgot this rule." After all, no one in the school has received an invitation letter from the principal for many years. Principal Yun didn't care about them at all and smiled at Arbor and the others. "Everyone, Please follow me. The students who were taking the test in front of the monument saw that Arbor and the others were welcomed by the principal personally and couldn't help but feel envious. Different people had different fates. Chi Duo couldn't help but say, "Principal, this is a bit inappropriate." "Oh. What else do you have to say?" Yun Piaomiao turned his head and glanced at Chi Duo. This made Chi Duo feel as if he was a bedbug that was being despised by Principal Yun. He couldn't help but feel angry. Bracing himself, he said, "These students look very young, especially this little girl. She's only 18 years old. Can the 5 spirits' origins reach the 6th level?" In other words, it was as if Dean Yun had deliberately opened a back door for Arbor, which made everyone very unhappy. "So you want the little girl to take the test at the Heaven Rank Testing Monument? Are you trying to embarrass her?" Dean Yun bluntly pointed out Chi Duo's thoughts, exposing the dark side of his heart and throwing it in front of everyone. Chi Duo's face turned green with anger. He was choked by the dean's words and didn't know how to respond for a long time. On the other side, the little girl opened her mouth and asked faintly, "If I can pass the Heaven Rank Testing Monument, what will you say?" "What?" Everyone looked over in shock. Was this child stupid? Since the principal had stepped forward to protect her, why did she have to jump into the trap? "If I pass, you can hand over your position as director. How about it?" Arbor turned his head to look at Yun Piaomiao. "What does the principal think of my suggestion?" Dean Yun couldn't help but feel helpless. Chapter 2785. Before this, Yun Fiang had hinted to him indirectly that this group of children were very powerful and temperamental children. Especially, there's a little girl among them that it's best not to provoke, or else you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Now, he suddenly understood why Yun Fei had that meaningful expression on his face when he said those words. Dean Yun maintained his smile and nodded as he reminded him, "Little fellow, this Heaven Rank Testing Monument is a little strange. Many years ago, there was a student with a 9th level spirit wood who tested it, but his wood spirit source was devoured instead, causing his body to completely collapse. Are you sure you want to consider this properly?" Arbor nodded her little head. Chio's voice from her conscious earlier floated around her ears. Master Silver, I feel Little Four's aura here." "Little Four. I didn't think that Little Four would come right after I found Little Three, ha 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 ha." Right now, Xiao Mu was almost certain that there was a sacred wood fragment sealed inside this heaven-rank stone tablet. That was why it could viciously devour someone else's 9th level wood spirit. Normally speaking, it was not very likely that the 5 spirit sources that had been comprehended would be taken away. For example, when Little Water had devoured the 9th level natural water, this natural water had not been comprehended by anyone and was completely an ownerless source. She didn't know what was going on with this 4th holy wood. Why could it directly steal someone else's 9th level wood spirit source? Arbor was certain that no matter how savage this Little Four was, it would not be able to hurt her. It was probably because its intelligence was more complete and it was bored being sealed in the stone monument all day, so it went to devour someone else's wood spirit source. Miss Qiao muttered in her heart that it was naughty and mischievous. She thought to herself that she could just be a little more patient and tame it properly. Then, Director Qi, do you accept this bet? Dean Yun turned his head and stared at the bald man with a stern expression. Bet? What bet? How did this escalate to a bet? Chi Duo was a little embarrassed at this moment and couldn't help but complain incessantly in his heart. It looked like in today's situation, if he didn't agree to this bet, the dean would not let him get away with it. In any case, he was extremely confident that this young girl could not possibly pass the Heaven Rank Testing Monument. Overconfident. Let's see how she's going to die later. Chi Duo's eyes flashed and he sneered, why not? But let's make things clear in advance. If this girl is injured in any way, her family members shouldn't come and make a scene. As a family member, Prince Mo and his teammates looked at him silently and nodded at the same time. Prince Mo said infuriatingly, "Don't worry, when the time comes, you'll be the one making a fuss." Pfft, Duan Yu couldn't help bursting into laughter. Actually, when they were teammates with Mo Yen, they were quite happy because Prince Mo was always going against other people. They just had to watch the show. The little girl took small steps and arrived in front of the heaven rank testing monument. She slapped it with one hand and heavily hit a protruding tiger relief on the monument. The entire stone tablet emitted many dazzling rays of light in a split second. In an instant, it illuminated the entire Wind Thunder City, turning it into daytime. This movement was so big that it was hard for people not to notice it. The residents of Wind Thunder City all pushed open their doors and rushed out. They raised their heads and stared blankly at the bright sky. The night instantly turned into daytime as white as snow. The entire city was in an uproar. The students and teachers of the royal school all rushed towards the end of the main school street. Chapter 2786. The nosy crowd in the city became excited. This was a rare spectacle. Wind Thunder City, which was already nightfall, was now shrouded in a white light. In everyone's eyes, there was only the light, the endless light. Chi Duo's eyes widened in shock. How is this possible? The heaven-rank stone steel actually reacted. Following Arbor's release of spiritual energy, streaks of spiritual energy poured into the stone steel. The ferocious tiger carving on the entire stone steel was about to leap off. Several consecrated elders in closed-door cultivation in the academy were also alarmed by such a huge commotion. Following the arrival of a group of students and instructors, they stared at the little girl conducting the test on the main academy street with astonishment in their eyes. The crown princess and the others are here. Chen Baojia couldn't help but exclaim. She followed the crowd and ran to the main academy street, but she was blocked by a group of people. Zhongli Jiwei clenched her fists, her eyes revealing traces of resentment. When she recalled what happened in north-facing Great Forest, she felt as if her heart was suffocating, and it was very uncomfortable. Crack! Amidst the uproar on the street, someone with sharp ears suddenly heard the sound of something cracking. Wow! That stone steel cracked. A cry came from the front row of the crowd. Everyone focused their eyes and saw that it was indeed the case. The glowing stone steel under the little girl's hand was cracking inch by inch. At first, the cracking speed wasn't fast, and only a small crack appeared on the stone steel. Immediately after, something that left everyone dumbfounded happened. This crack started to split and spread, and in a short while, the stone steel was densely covered with fine cracks. After a bang, the entire stone steel shattered into powder in Arbor's hand. For a time, Main Academy Street, which was packed with people, was completely silent. The instant the stone steel shattered, Arbor's body moved, and she moved to grab a lustrous green light. It was a pity that Little Four ran away faster than a rabbit, slipping through her fingers in an instant. Only Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others saw this erratic lustrous green light. Xiao Mu creased her brows and secretly retracted her small hand. This fragment number 4 was indeed a mischievous little fellow. It was true that it had gained sentience. It actually knew how to escape. What a heartless little thing. She had spent a lot of effort to rescue it from the stone tablet. Forget it, this matter can't be rushed. In any case, this little fellow can't leave Wind Thunder City. After all, the main body of the holy wood was here to restrain it, so it would only wander around for a while. Miss Chiao was very easygoing to her own people, even though Chio kept yelling in her ear, "Master, beat it to death, beat it to death, beat it to death." She pretended not to hear him. After retracting her small hand and turning around, Xiao Mu finally realized that Main Academy Street was currently packed with a crowd of passers-by. She frowned expressionlessly and turned to look at Dean Yun. "Did I pass?" Yun Piaomiao recovered from her shock and hurriedly nodded. Of course I passed. What a joke, the stone steel was so bright that it exploded. If this didn't count as passing, then what did? No. Chi Duo started making a fuss as expected. This stone steel doesn't show the level of the 5 spirit origins. How can this count as passing? Everyone was speechless. The stone steel had already exploded, so what was there to show? Mo Lien snorted. I didn't say anything wrong about you, right? I knew you would make a fuss. It's no use making a fuss. Yun Piaomiao sneered. From today onward, Director Qi will be relieved of his duties. Chapter 2788. Second brother also disdained him for being annoying. Youth Qin Jiu felt that he was especially pitiful. He had been disdained by young ladies the entire way, and when he finally met a few family members, he wanted to complain to them, but second brother said he was annoying. He didn't dare to provoke this second brother, who looked aloof and cold as frost. Unless he courted death, he absolutely wouldn't provoke him. Fifth brother. Youth Qin Jiu still leaned closer to the good-natured fifth Qin. Fifth young master Qin revealed a rare amused expression, and he nodded at him. Why did you guys come to the academy so late? Speaking of this, youth Qin Jiu couldn't help but shed tears of sympathy for himself. Back then, he was merely a quarter of an hour late in packing his things, and the Qin Estate's air transportation spirit tool got away. As a result, he had no choice but to set off for the Royal Academy by himself. It was so pitiful to sleep in the open during the journey. Most importantly, he even got lost. Although he finally encountered Arbor's group in the great north-facing forest, he was still disdained the entire way. It would have been fine if he didn't talk about it, but now that he did, he really shed bitter tears. Fifth young master Qin couldn't help but have black lines on his forehead after listening to him prattle on about his experiences. Second brother was right. Qin Jiu, this child, was really quite long-winded. Shi Yongqian had also run over with the crowd, and her eyes couldn't help but light up when she saw the Qin Estates group. Second young master. She walked forward with light steps and a smile. She had already been in Wind Thunder City for several days, but apart from coincidentally encountering young Master Omega Kotoku 3 days ago, she hadn't seen him at all. She really missed him. Qin Xian faintly creased his brows. This Miss Shi was truly annoying. He disliked her very much, and his mood worsened especially when he thought of those fragmented dreams. When he saw her walking towards him with a smile, he turned to leave, not wanting to look at this Miss Shi at all. Shi Yongqian's charming smile froze on her face, and she couldn't say a word for a long time. Her heart was even more overwhelmed by overflowing grievances. Second young master had changed. Although he had treated her with a cold attitude in the past, he had always kept a distance. But it would never be like this. The moment he saw her, he couldn't hide the annoyance and anger in his eyes. It was as if Shi Yongqian, was a bedbug and didn't want her to come close at all. All of this seemed to have started after he was seriously injured, and it all started to change. She had also heard family head Qin mention that the second young master had previously suffered extremely severe injuries, and even one of his avatars had been destroyed. Shi Yongqian clenched her fists tightly. Suddenly, she felt the communication jade talisman under her sleeve move. She hurriedly withdrew from the crowd and walked to the side to take out the jade talisman. This jade talisman was given to her by family head Qin before she left. Thinking of this, Shi Yongqian was extremely happy. Regardless of whether the second young master liked her or not, at least family head Qin was grooming her as his future daughter-in-law. As long as family head Qin stood by her side, she believed that she would be able to make second young master change his mind and fall in love with her again. There was a line of small characters jumping on the jade talisman, it was this little crown princess of the divine land who had severely injured Xian, and Wu. Shi Yongqian's pupils shrank. A trace of disbelief flashed through her eyes. Could it be that something unexpected had happened between second young master and the little crown princess? Was second young master's previous injuries caused by the little crown princess? Chapter 2789. It would take some time for the people she sent to Sikong planet to inquire about the matter. After all, the divine province was quite far from Sikong planet, so it wasn't that convenient to travel back and forth. Moreover, it wasn't like she hadn't sent people there before, but several waves of people never returned. Shi Yongqian still didn't know that Sikong planet's Mo Kingdom capital was protected by a shielding talisman matrix. If one wanted to use a talisman matrix to cross between two boundaries, it would only cause the person using the talisman matrix to unwittingly fall into space-time reversal. The several waves of people she sent there also died silently and inexplicably like this. In view of heavenly law's existence, she couldn't possibly send many people to Sikong planet frequently. The personal bodyguard she sent this time, Miao Sheng, didn't use a talisman matrix and walked through a very concealed and special passage. Since there was no news back after so long, he should have succeeded. Unfortunately, that concealed passage could only allow one person to pass through at a time. Otherwise, she could bring several more people down with her. Miao Sheng's level 12 cultivation as a great spiritual cultivator would probably be partially suppressed after going down. Shi Yongqian's eyes flashed, and a trace of ruthlessness flitted through them. She hoped that Miao Sheng would be able to find something substantial this time and not disappoint her. Shi Yongqian lowered her head and glanced at the small characters jumping about on the jade communication talisman. The word "kill" was faintly discernible at the bottom. Her heart jolted, and she tightly gripped the jade talisman in her hand. She looked up at the little stoic standing at the side of the plaza, and an uncontrollable storm surged in her eyes like a dark night. As if sensing something, Arbor inadvertently looked up in the direction where Shi Yongqian disappeared. She only saw a familiar figure, and a faint sneer flitted through her eyes. "Follow me, children." Headmaster Yun led everyone to the Royal Academy. The entire inner city of Wind Thunder City belonged to the Royal Academy. The outer city's area was only half the size of the inner city, and many common people who moved here to do small businesses lived there. Apart from the students, there were only the instructors and their family members in the inner city. There were currently more than 13,000 students in the entire Royal Academy. Including the instructors and their family members, there were more than 20,000 people. If the Royal Academy's 8,000 guards were included, the population would be close to 30,000 people. The Royal Academy accepted all kinds of talents from the 3 prefectures, and accepted all kinds of students from all over the world. In the entire inner city of the Royal Academy, other than the study area, there was also a rich and colorful living area, which took up about half of the entire inner city. There were many streets and shops in the residential area. If the students didn't want to go too far, they could buy some things in the inner city's residential area. However, it was common knowledge that the price of goods in the inner city was 2 to 3 times higher than similar goods in the outer city. If one wanted to save money, it would be cheaper to buy some daily necessities from the outer city. Arbor's group followed behind Dean Yun and looked around the academy curiously. Although it was called an academy, it was actually a medium-sized city. The academy basically had everything. It's roughly divided into these 2 areas, the learning area and the living area. Once you've settled down, you can slowly familiarize yourself with the environment, Yun Piamiao said with a smile. The academy's mission area is to the north of the living quarters. If you want to get rich resources, you can wait until you're familiar with the place before going to the mission area center to accept missions. Chapter 2790. The points obtained from the mission can be used to exchange for some items in the resource area. Dean Yun gave them a rough explanation. You can go and understand the details later. Arbor's group nodded and followed Dean Yun to the inner city's residential area. The students' lodging was to the south of the west. Of course, there were good and bad accommodations. The worst accommodations would cost 100 spirit coins per month, and 6 people could share a room with each other. Because it was cheaper, this type of room was basically snatched up by those who arrived first. For example, Arbor's group, who arrived so late, it was naturally impossible for them to snatch the cheap stuff. A small room for 4 people cost 300 spirit coins per month. A slightly better private room for 2 would cost 1,000 spirit coins a month for the accommodation. There were fewer people who stayed in this type of room, and only the noble ladies and young masters of aristocratic families were willing to spend this money. A single room for 1 person cost 3,000 spirit coins per month. If it was a small courtyard with a garden, it would cost 10,000 spirit coins. The best lodging was the garden house, which had servants and odd-job workers. There were 2 gardens, one big and one small, and there were even guards at the door. This kind of garden house could accommodate about 15 to 20 people, and the monthly lodging cost was as high as 20,000 spirit coins. Currently, it seemed that only 2 rooms had been sold, and it was unknown which 2 spendthrifts paid for them. Why don't you just rob? When Little Fatty and Chi Xian heard the sky-high lodging price, their eyes widened as they angrily roared at Dean Yun. Dean Yun laughed and actually didn't feel awkward at all. He raised his hand and rubbed his nose. One was willing to take the hit, and the other was willing to take the hit. Arbor also felt that it was unbearably expensive, and his little face tightened into a ball. After a long while, he said, "This is even more expensive than the housing in our divine prefecture's imperial capital." It was simply ridiculously expensive, all right. She remembered that Mu Jingfeng rented out a house in the southern part of the city, and the yearly rent was only 30,000 spirit coins. But here, it was 20,000 spirit coins per month. Although the house Mu Jingfeng rented out might not be as big as this, it wasn't too far off. Yun Piaomiao, this profiteer, was going to be expensive beyond the star domain. Dean Yun smiled calmly and said, "You can go and accept missions. If you can complete a level 6 mission in a month, not only will you obtain a lot of mission points, but you will also receive a lot of mission points. The cost of the most luxurious accommodation can be reduced by half. If you can take over the garden area, you'll be able to live in the best place. It's definitely the best area in the entire academy. There aren't many of these types of special estates left." Dean Yun continued to encourage, "There are only 4 such special-grade courtyards in the entire academy. They are both large and exquisite. Can you go up to the sky?" Arbor pointed at the distant mountains floating in the sky. Yun Piaomiao looked back and rubbed his nose. "That's the cloud mist peak where this principal lives. In the entire Wind Thunder City, there are only a few mountains that can reach the sky." Arbor curled his lips. "That's because of the rune array." Hearing this, Yun Piaomiao's eyes couldn't help but light up. "Little Miss actually knows. I also know that it's definitely a flying jade talisman array made up of 24 flying talismans." Arbor paused for a moment before continuing, "Furthermore, there are more than 100 sets of talisman arrays used. This was enough to allow these mountains to ascend." Yun Piaomiao's eyes were practically shining. Indeed. After so many years, this little miss was the only one who had seen through the mystery. Chapter 2793. The competition between the 3 academies has been going on for a long time. For resources, for benefits, and for the glory of each of the 3 prefectures. Mo Lien hugged the little fellow and spoke intermittently about several matters. After a while, he looked down and saw that the little fellow's breathing was even and she had already fallen asleep. He couldn't help but laugh and lowered his head to give her a light peck on her little mouth. Then, he laid her down flat and adjusted her sleeping position to a more comfortable one. He propped up his chin with one hand and gently stroked a few strands of hair by her cheek with his fingers. He stared at her intently for a long time. Early the next morning, everyone was woken up by the kitchen maid's hoarse voice. It was unknown where this kitchen maid came from, but when she saw that no one had come out of their rooms, she picked up a broken basin and started banging on it. As she knocked, she shouted, "Students, wake up. You're waking up a little too early. There's still 2 hours to 7 in the morning." Seeing everyone open the door and glare at her, the kitchen maid said with a serious expression, "Students, you still have to wash up and eat breakfast. It will take at least an hour to get from Winter Forest Court to the Academy District. It's forbidden to ride any kind of beast in the Academy. You can only rely on yourself to run, or use your spiritual energy to cast a flying spell to rush over." So that's how it was. Only then did everyone silently retract their glares and start washing up in resignation. Breakfast was quite sumptuous. While the group of 10 were eating, Mu Xingqian's voice came from outside. "Younger sister." Mu Xingqian was a senior student of the Imperial Academy. He naturally had his own room in the past. However, seeing that he was carrying a bag in his left hand and a lunchbox in his right, it seemed like he wanted to move, and Arbor looked up at him and expressionlessly ate the porridge in her hand. Mu Xingqian was already used to her stoic little cold face. He walked up and placed the lunchbox in front of everyone. "Younger sister, ginseng chicken soup, drink it while it's hot." Prince Mo glanced at his brother-in-law vigilantly. His brother-in-law even knew how to make soup. He was starting to feel threatened. "I'll take you to the learning area in a while. You're not familiar with this place. There's a small path from Donglin Garden, so it'll save you a lot of time. I'm Jojo's big brother, Mu Xingqian. You must be Jojo's friends. Let's get to know each other." When Qi Xianxian and the rest heard him speak so familiarly, they hurriedly stood up and greeted him. "Big brother Mu, what are you carrying?" "My bedding." Mu Xingqian turned to Arbor and said, "Sister, your place is spacious. I'll check out of my room. Let's stay together in the future." Everyone was speechless. The petty person in Mo Lian's heart kept thumping his chest and stamping his feet. If he had known earlier, he would have gotten a double room with Sir Qiao Qiao back then. Look at this big family. In the future, if he wanted to steal a kiss from his little wife, he would have to avoid his teammates and brother-in-law. So Bitter Arbor drank a small bowl of ginseng chicken soup made by Mu Xingqian. More than half of the soup went into the little fatty's stomach. After that, everyone praised their big brother's culinary skills. Everyone was beaming as they followed Mu Xingqian out of Donglin Garden and headed to the learning area. Along the way, Mu Xingqian introduced the buildings and sceneries to them. He brought them to the largest practice field in the learning area. At this time, many students were already there. The new students were gathered in a circle. The older students were also mixed together. They lowered their heads and whispered to each other. Chapter 2794. Arbor's group attracted quite a bit of attention when they went over. After all, everyone in this group had outstanding looks. Plus, many people had seen the little girl at the plaza on Main Academy Street before, so they were especially curious now. Their scrutinizing gazes continuously swept over the little girl, as if wanting to see through this child. What kind of energy was stored in such a tiny person's body to be able to shatter the heaven-rank testing steel in one go? Everyone whispered to each other, pointing and whispering to each other. Arbor turned a deaf ear to these words and followed Mu Xingqian through the crowd with Mo Lian, Duan Yu, and Qi Xianxian to arrive at the circle where the new students stood. Eldest young Sir Qin walked over with a grin and waved his paw at the little girl. "Little fellow, we meet again." Arbor nodded reluctantly. She felt like the Qin estate's people were like lingering spirits that lingered everywhere she went. Eldest young Sir Qin winked and smiled at her. "Little stoic, you can't be annoyed that I've appeared in front of you again, right? You're quite self-aware. Prince Mo held the little fellow's hand and walked to the side, throwing a look at eldest young Sir Qin for him to figure it out himself. The eldest young Sir wanted to chase after them and say a few words, but at this time, Headmaster Yun flew over from afar with several academy consecrators and a dozen or so valiant and formidable instructors. They stopped on a raised platform in front of the practice field. An instructor looked down at the 10,000 or so students below and said neither softly nor loudly, "New and old students, line up separately. This needs no further explanation, right?" Everyone started moving in unison. They each lined up in several hundred rows according to the three academies' factions. The old students had lined up who knew how many times. Every time the academy summoned students to the practice field for an important announcement, they would line up to give instructions. This had already become a routine. There were about 1,000 new students here, and they each lined up in 7 or 8 rows, crookedly lining up to the left of the old students. "Headmaster, please speak." Dean Yun walked up with an enigmatic look on his face. He didn't look like the talkative person who was trying to promote the special class housing estate to Arbor and the others yesterday. He said a few simple words of encouragement to the new students. Then, he waved his hand and gracefully retreated, giving the place to one of the academy's worshippers. This consecrator of the academy's disciplinary courtyard was notoriously fussy and strict. He recited all of the Royal Academy's rules and regulations according to the book, to the point that Xiao Mu was about to doze off. After reciting for half an hour, he finally finished reciting. After the academy consecrator left, Principal Yun smiled and said to the crowd, "Now, let's invite the new representative, Student Xiao, to come on stage and say a few words." Eldest young Sir Qin's mouth twitched as he turned to look in Arbor's direction with an odd expression. At the same time, Dou Fenghua and Dou Fengmian, Qin Xian, Qin Xiu, Qin Jiu, and some of the patrician families of the divine province who somewhat understood the little stoic were also looking at her across the crowd. ACI, who was standing in Ming Province's line, also looked over curiously. Everyone was thinking at the same time, what did you want the little stoic to say on stage? Arbor expressionlessly stood on the high platform of the practice field and gazed icily at the students below. Everyone felt as if they were being stared at by a ferocious beast. "Students, study hard and don't provoke me. Otherwise, die." Everyone was flabbergasted. Chapter 2795. Principal Yun turned his head to look at the little fellow beside him in confusion. This he asked her to say a few sentences, and she really did say a few sentences. "Study hard and don't provoke her. Otherwise, die." It was a few sentences. Now, Principal Yun had a deep understanding of the meaning behind Yun Chang's meaningful gaze. Crown Prince Mo exasperatedly exchanged glances with the little fatty and the others. What was going on? Why was everyone looking at him as if he was a weirdo? He definitely didn't teach his wife to say these words. Last night, he asked his wife what she was going to say on stage. His wife said that she was just going to say a few sentences. He naively thought that his wife should know what to say. However, it was true. When she went on stage today, she just said a few sentences, 2 sentences, 2 sentences. After Sir Jojo said 2 sentences, she realized that everyone was silent. Everyone was looking at her as if they were looking at a god. She couldn't help but frown, turned her head and blinked hard at Principal Yun. "Principal Yun, kid, do you think everyone is a worm in your stomach?" "What do you mean by blinking?" Sir Jojo blinked at Principal Yun again. One of the tutors at the side couldn't stand it anymore. He coughed lightly and said to Principal Yun, "Principal, this student should be asking you if she can leave." This year's new student representative was definitely a weirdo. The instructors thought to themselves as they carefully sized up the little fellow. They realized that this little girl was expressionless from the start to the end. Her emotions didn't fluctuate at all. It looked like she was really a cold-faced little doll. Principal Yun pursed his lips and laughed awkwardly. He reluctantly went up to save the situation and said, Student Xiao's meaning should be, for everyone to, study hard, work hard, and help each other. The entire royal school should be tied together like a rope. Don't fight, bitch, dog fight, just because we are from different factions. Appropriate competition is necessary, but we should also pay attention to the friendship between students, right? The students below all heaved a sigh of relief. That should be the case. What the dean said was still somewhat reasonable. Previously, they must have misunderstood the little girl's meaning. The little girl shouldn't have threatened them on the first day of school. It was difficult for Headmaster Yun to say so much in one breath to smooth things over for the little stoic. He wanted to cry tears of sympathy for himself. Was it easy for him? No. Just as Principal Yun finished speaking his impassioned words to save the situation, the little stoic directly denied it. I just want to warn them to be careful and stop bothering me. She turned her head and glanced at Dean Yun. Once I make a move, there is no turning back. Everyone was speechless. Dean Yun's breath was stuck in his throat, and he almost choked from anger. This little girl was truly someone who could anger someone to death without paying for it. Could this be considered as him failing to save the situation by going all out to save the day? This little girl is quite arrogant. A rough voice suddenly emerged from the group of students. Everyone turned their heads to look and saw a guy draped in tiger skin, revealing his arms and legs. His appearance was especially bold and unrestrained. He strode out from the crowd and leaped onto the stage. Underworld Province's branches DAO. Ask for guidance on this new student strength. I want to see what kind of strength can make you say such arrogant words. Chapter 2796. Ming Yassi's expression was displeased, and he turned to look at a robust youth beside him. Who is that? This young man, who was also a senior student of the Underworld Region branch, was called Turnbull. Although he did not understand what was going on when he saw that His Highness was unhappy, he still said respectfully, his name is Dao. He is an extremely talented clansman from the D family's branch. Ming Yassi glanced coldly at Dao on the platform and asked in a bad mood, who allowed him to go up. Running over to find trouble with a little girl to make his presence known. Ming Yassi thought that the little girl already disliked him to begin with. She wouldn't mistakenly think that he was the one who let that idiot go up to challenge her, right? Would the little fellow dislike him even more because of this? While Ming Yassi was endlessly criticizing, Turnbull's expression was a bit puzzled. Although he hadn't interacted with His Highness for more than 2 days, he believed he had a good grasp of his temperament. This was an extremely arrogant and difficult person to get along with. Yet today, he was actually asking him why Dao went up to challenge her. Shouldn't he challenge her? That little girl was slapping the faces of all the senior students of the 3 branches in the academy. A freshman little girl dared to be so arrogant. It would be strange if no one went up to challenge her. Tell him to come down. Ming Yassi said coldly. The more he thought about it, the more likely this was. He absolutely couldn't let the little girl misunderstand him. Ali, who was standing beside him, couldn't resist sneaking a glance at his elder brother. He hastily cleared his throat and shouted, Dao. Come down. His voice was neither loud nor soft, just enough for all the students to hear him clearly. Akir had previously been surrounded and complimented by a group of new students, so when the instructors asked her to line up, she was escorted to the front of the new students. At this time, she was still some distance away from Ali and Yassi, who were mixed in the back of the crowd. Now that she heard Ali say this, she couldn't help but secretly grit her teeth and look up at the little stoic on the platform. Without a doubt, Big Brother Yassi had instructed Ali to shout this. What was so good about that stoic girl that she kept calling Big Brother Yassi on her mind all day? Dao, who had just stood in front of the little stoic and didn't have time to speak, was involuntarily taken aback when he heard Alex's words, and he turned to look at the crowd. Turnbull was afraid that Dao's honest nature would act up again, so he hurriedly called out, "Dao, His Highness asked you to come down." With that said, how could Dao not understand? So it was His Highness Dark Yas who told him to go down. Although, he was a little cowardly. He had just jumped onto the high platform and rolled down with his tail between his legs. It was really a little embarrassing. However, His Highness Yas had even defeated the former Crown Prince, His Highness Underworld Wolf. What a joke! He was just a disciple of a small branch of the D family, so he naturally could not openly challenge His Highness ACI. Therefore, Dao, who had been on the stage for less than 2 seconds, jumped off the stage with his tail between his legs. The little stoic was already prepared for battle and was about to summon her feral. The other party suddenly said that he didn't want to fight, and then rolled down by himself. This was simply inexplicable. Crazy. The stoic man muttered to himself. The few instructors who were closer to her couldn't help but twitch their mouths when they heard this. Ha 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 ha. I didn't expect that someone from Great Ming Province would also cower. A mocking laugh came from outside the crowd. A figure flashed and scuttled onto the high platform with a whoosh. Chapter 2797. This person's outfit was even more unsightly than the tiger skin outfit from before. His hair was disheveled, his entire body stinked, and his fat belly was exposed. His feet were bare, and the soles of his feet were covered in a layer of 3 feet of dirt. Darling Qiao hurriedly took a step back, and her eyes widened. Get lost. Stinky thing. It's unbearably stinky. All the teachers were speechless as their mouths twitched. That man immediately flew into a rage and shouted sternly, "This little girl is really arrogant and conceited. Today, let me teach you how to be a person." Arbor didn't wait for him to fly over, and his figure immediately flashed and hid behind Principal Yun. He angrily glared at the principal. What kind of Imperial Academy is this? You're picking up trash from the academy. Can just anyone enter this Imperial Academy? The students don't even have a uniform. One moment there was a tiger skin man, and the next moment there was a stinky beggar wearing only a pair of underpants. It simply made people speechless. Of course we do. The principal said with an aggrieved face, it's just that here, we don't require everyone to buy the academy uniform. It's all for people to do what they can. Some people, after entering the academy for several years, still haven't saved enough money to buy a set of academy uniform. This time, it was Arbor's turn to be dumbstruck. How much is your academy uniform? This time, there was no need for Principal Yun Piaomiao to reply. The teacher from before spoke again with an indifferent expression, 100,000 spirit coins. Why don't you just rob? The entire academy's sky was filled with the little girl's angry roar. All the students instantly felt that the little girl's roar was simply what everyone was thinking. You can't say it like that. Our academy uniform isn't some simple clothing. It's a defensive spiritual clothing. It can effectively block 100 full-powered attacks from a spirit master below level 10. You definitely won't lose out to your little girl. Why don't you buy one? Let me tell you, if you want to enter the heaven ranking and earth ranking, you must wear this academy uniform. This is also for the fairness of the competition. Is your team made up of 9 people or 10 people? Give me a set of all of them. What was happening? Wasn't this the freshman entrance assembly? Why did their principal Yun suddenly start promoting? Everyone looked at Yun Piaomiao with a dumbfounded expression. The instructors could not bear to look at it. One of the consecrators coughed softly and went forward to tug at Dean Yun's sleeve. Only then did Dean Yun put away his promotional expression and chuckled. Oh, where were we just now? Brat, do you think you'll be fine just because you're hiding behind the dean? Today, let me teach you how to behave. A smelly bug dares to boast that it wants to teach me how to behave. The repeated provocations made Arbor fly into a rage. His voice was extremely cold as he said, "Kill him." There was an uproar among the crowd of students below. They all recognized the person who jumped onto the stage. He was from the barbarian tribe and did not belong to any of the three big schools. He was not weak and was also a senior student of the royal school. And now, the stoic-faced little girl actually said, "Kill him." Wasn't she a bit too arrogant? In the blink of an eye, as soon as the little girl finished speaking, a giant sand scorpion taller and stronger than a hill suddenly appeared behind the little fellow and quickly crawled over with rustling movements. A pair of large, sturdy pincers abruptly pierced toward that person. Chapter 2798. This sturdy sand scorpion waved its two large pincers and rapidly spun like a top. With a flick of its tail, it released its hidden stingers with a whoosh. This round of attack was fast, ferocious, and wild. It was simply ecstatic. Almost all the mentors were dumbfounded. With a loud boom, the entire stage collapsed from the sturdy sand scorpion's stomp. Everyone took advantage of the momentum and landed in front of the crowd. Principal Yun opened his mouth and raised his hand to say, "Have mercy." That sand scorpion swung its large black tail and sent that underpants man flying. It swiftly crawled forward and used its large pincers to clamp down on the underpants man. The other party didn't even have the slightest chance to retaliate before he was pressed to the ground. Its stinger was raised high, and a poisonous needle was about to pierce that underpants man's thigh. Principal Yun quickly flew over and used a wisp of sacred energy to land on the sand scorpion's pincers, causing it to retract its stinger in pain. The underpants man took advantage of the situation to roll out from under the scorpion. His face was ghastly pale as he shouted loudly. After cursing in a tribal dialect that no one understood, he hastily circulated a wisp of spiritual energy and struck the sand scorpion's weak abdomen. Hiss, hiss. The sand scorpion was hit and crawled back 2 steps in pain. The underpants man was abruptly struck down by a bolt of lightning. Sir Jojo was thoroughly enraged. He flew up into the air, and hundreds of thunder spirit talismans floated around him. Yun Piao Miao. You think you can save him by helping him? Even heavenly law can't stop the people I, Arbor, want to kill. Let alone you. His shout silenced the entire venue. After Yun Piao Miao and the mentors recovered from their shock, they wanted to stop him. However, at this time, Mo Lien, Duan Yu, Qi Xian, Little Fatty, Lu Yu, and the others also flew over and blocked the mentors. Since it's a spar between students, isn't it a bit unreasonable for the mentors to make a move? Mo Lien sneered. Whoever dares to help today will be making an enemy of our divine province. You want to bully me with numbers? If you want to fight, come find us. Little Fatty raised his arms and said indifferently. Yun Piao Miao was completely speechless. No, I'm not helping. Didn't you say that I'm helping you? Are you bullying Jojo because no one can help you? Qi Xian angrily interrupted Principal Yun's words. Her small face turned ruthless as she said, "Are you all blind? Just who is provoking who? Who is rushing out to court death? Can't you see?" That rigid reverend from the abstinence courtyard was so angry that he was about to explode. All of you are ignoring the academy's rules. You don't want to continue studying here, do you? Duan Yu snorted. With such an indiscriminate academy, it doesn't matter whether I study or not. Yun Piao Miao wanted to cry but had no tears. Just now, he really didn't want to help that underpants student. It was just that as the dean, he couldn't just watch a student fight to death. Who would have thought that such a simple move would incur the wrath of the masses? All right, everyone calm down, calm down. Dean Yin acted as if he was putting out a fire. He helped to extinguish the anger of Mo Lien and the others, and then hurriedly extinguished the anger of the commandment yard's consecrators. In the end, it was that underpants guy who courted death. If he didn't come up, then wouldn't everything be fine? While he was pondering, countless bolts of lightning had already descended layer by layer, explosively bursting into lightning flowers on the underpants guy's body. Chapter 2799. What kind of person could withstand several hundred spirit thunder talismans? The students below shuddered one after another. They uniformly looked at the little stoic girl as if they were looking at a monster, and they involuntarily took a few steps back. Especially Dao, who had courted disaster by jumping onto the stage but was called down by Yasi. He was practically shedding tears of gratitude as he looked at His Highness. His Highness deserved to be His Highness. After careful deliberation, he naturally came up with a plan. If His Highness hadn't told him to get down, the unlucky guy who was attacked by the sand scorpions and bombarded by hundreds of lightning bolts on the stage would be him, Dao. Thank you, His Highness, thank you, Underworld Province's God Punisher. The heavens still protected him, Dao. At this point, in the hearts of all the students at the Imperial Academy, the lofty image of the terrifying little stoic murderous star, nouveau riche little stoic, and the little stoic who opened a talisman shop at home, had been thoroughly established. Several of Dao's good friends stepped forward and patted his shoulders comfortingly, exchanging rueful glances with him. Fortunately, we have the wise and mighty His Highness, so we won't be like that big idiot from the barbarian tribe and provoke this murderous star. The Sun Moon Temple's Holy Son has graced us with his presence to pay a visit to the Imperial Academy's Dean Yun Piaomiao. Following the sound of an ethereal female voice, melodious stringed and woodwind music entered everyone's ears. In the distant sky, a dozen red-crowned cranes with long white feathers could be seen flying unhurriedly toward the academy amidst layers of clouds. Rose petals, which were surrounded by a fragrance, fell down layer by layer. Several dozen fairy-like flower children cleared the path, scattering petals all over the sky. Behind them followed a luxurious sedan carried by 16 brawny men. The sedan flew through the air and headed toward the students. Arbor's hand paused slightly, and a faint trace of disgust surfaced in his heart. This Sun Moon Temple style was truly quite disgusting. Whether it was that saintess from before or this holy sun, they were all extravagant as soon as they appeared. Every time they appeared, they would be swarmed by crowds of people, as if they were afraid others wouldn't know their noble identities. They were just going out, so why were they so particular? The moment Arbor's hand paused, the lightning in the sky also retracted slightly. The sedan of 16 people had already arrived above everyone's heads. At this moment, a surge of energy surged from the carriage toward Sir Jojo. This power was surging and abnormally fierce. If this attack hit, even if Jojo didn't die, he would definitely lose half his life. Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others all turned serious, and they swiftly shot towards Arbor's side. When Arbor sensed that something was wrong, he decisively covered himself with an eggshell defensive barrier. At this critical moment, a red figure suddenly appeared beside Lord Xiqiao. Reaching out, the figure grabbed Xiqiao and carried her away. With a flick of his sleeve, the surging power was suddenly blocked, and all of it was repelled with a thunderous force. Bang! A ferocious force landed on the carriage. How could the 16 burly men who were carrying the carriage resist? In an instant, they were scattered by this force and fell to the ground. At the same time, the carriage was completely shattered by the force. After a loud bang, a white figure scuttled out from between the muslin curtains. He coughed to suppress his astonishment. The other party's cultivation was actually a level higher than his. He was already a spiritual venerable, so could it be that the other party was actually an immortal venerable expert? At this moment, Mo Lien and Duan Yu had already arrived at Arbor's side. Chapter 2800. Taking a closer look, the little fellow's stoic face was expressionless, and her body was wrapped in a transparent eggshell. She was being held in Hu Jinshan's arms, and that appearance was simply a bit comical. Mo Lien secretly suppressed the amusement in her heart and reached out to take the eggshell. The little fellow's entire body was wrapped in that eggshell, so she was just a sphere. It was hard to grab anywhere, so she could only hold her. She looked down at her appearance and expressionlessly undid the defensive barrier on her body before hopping off the ground. Duanyu dared to bet his head that if anyone dared to laugh out loud, Sir Jojo would definitely take out a washboard to beat them up. Being interrupted by the Holy Sun inexplicably saved the life of that brat from the barbarian tribe. That guy was already at his last gasp from being struck by lightning and was silently dragged away by someone. When Arbor looked back, the person had already run away, so he could only resentfully feed Sand Scorpion a pill and recall it back to Shaji planet. Other people only thought that the little girl recalled the spirit beast into her spirit beast space. Yun Piaomiao breathed a sigh of relief, but her expression darkened again. She coldly glared at the white-robed Holy Son of the Sun Moon Temple who floated over. Holy Sun Mi Yen, you came from afar, so our academy should warmly welcome you. However, you suddenly attacked our academy's student. This is very unjustifiable. Holy Sun Mi Yen coldly swept a glance at Mo Lien, Duanyu, and the others before his gaze finally landed on a grinning, tall man waving a small peach-pink fan. A sharp glint flashed through the depths of his eyes. This young man before him was actually a venerated immortal. How was this possible? In the entire divine province, the number of venerated immortals could be counted on one hand. When did such a young venerated immortal appear? Why didn't he know? Shouldn't a venerated immortal have ascended and left this place? Did something go wrong with the heavenly law's restrictions? Why wasn't this venerated immortal restrained by the heavenly law? If Hu Jinshan could hear this person's inner voice, she would definitely infuriate him to death and tell him without hesitation, this venerated immortal has already come out of the Tower of Punishment, so what more do you want? Worst comes to worst, I'll just capture my true self and force my way in again. It's a misunderstanding, Mayan said calmly, nodding apologetically at Din Yun. Jojo tugged at Mo Lien's sleeve. Without another word, Prince Mo's eyes flashed fiercely, and a gust of wind from his fist, which was imbued with saint power, flew towards the Holy Sun's face. At the same time, Arbor also raised his hand and threw hundreds of ice spikes at the saint. The son of Saint was caught off guard and dodged twice in a very embarrassing manner. He was able to easily dodge Arbor's icicles, but he had to frown and take Mo Lien's punch seriously. He crossed his arms in front of him, thinking that the holy armor gauntlets on his arms would definitely be able to block his opponent's attack. He didn't expect that he would be knocked back a few steps by this fist wind. Only then did he take a deep breath to stabilize his body. His eyes were filled with unconcealable astonishment. Just as the son of Saint raised his head and was about to look at Mo Lien, he saw another gust of fierce saint power burrowing out from the side and pouncing at his face again. Damn it! One shouldn't hit someone's face in a fight, but these people actually wanted to hit his face one by one. The son of Saint gritted his teeth and withstood Duanyu's attack. In the next second, he saw a crafty saint power materialize into 5 fingers. Pa! He slapped his face. The little stoic was relieved. Before the son of Saint flared up, she said coldly, "This is also a misunderstanding." Chapter 28:01. Holy Sun Mi Yen was extremely vexed, and a harsh glint flitted through his eyes. His gaze swept past Mo Lien, Duanyu, and He Chen before finally landing on the cold-faced little stoic. His gaze was like a needle, filled with endless coldness and probing as it landed on the little fellow. Headmaster Yun frowned and stepped forward to block the students. His gaze met Holy Sun Mi Yan's indifferent gaze. "May I know the reason for Holy Sun Mi Yan's sudden visit?" This Holy Sun came today to convey a message to the Divine Province's Crown Prince. Holy Sun Mi Yan regained his usual calmness, as if the slap he had just received didn't exist. Recently, the temple's great divine priest inspected the rear mountain and found that the mystic realm might open. The mystic realm will probably open earlier this time. Holy Sun Miyan's gaze coldly landed on Prince Mo's face, staring at him to check his expression. However, he was soon disappointed. No emotion could be discerned from Prince Mo's face at all. This Holy Sun came to inform the two of you. I hope you can make some preparations in advance. Also convey the great divine priest's message. Mi Yan lowered his eyes slightly and nodded at Headmaster Yun. The temple intends to provide 30 quotas to the Royal Academy for the opening of the Sun-Moon Mystic Realm this time. I hope Headmaster Yun can cooperate with our temple to select talents. As long as you obtain a jade tablet, you can enter the mystic realm with the holy nun and the temple's people to explore and search for treasures. Everyone can bring out a treasure from the mystic realm. The excess will be turned over to the temple. Yun Piaomiao couldn't help but be taken aback. The Sun-Moon Temple's mystic realm opened once every 10 years, and this wasn't the first time it opened. However, every time the Sun-Moon Mystic Realm opened in the past, the temple would send people to guard it strictly to prevent outsiders from sneaking in. Unexpectedly, they were so generous this time to open it to the Royal Academy. Oh, of course, this couldn't be considered generous. After entering the Mystic Realm, each Academy student could only take one item at most, and the excess would be turned over to the temple. However, it was already very good to be able to go in and have a look, gain experience, and obtain a handy treasure in passing. Benevolent smiles immediately appeared on the faces of the Academy's worshippers. They nodded and said, "Dean, this is a good thing." Dean Yun weighed the pros and cons and nodded. This is indeed good news. Thank you, Holy Sun. Holy Sun Mi Yan nodded lightly. During the selection period, this Holy Sun intends to personally see the strength of this batch of students. I'm afraid I will have to stay here for a while. Sorry to trouble Dean Yun. Dean Yun nodded and called for 2 people to arrange accommodations for the deity's Templars people. There's no need to go through so much trouble. Then, he turned to look at Mo Lien and said, I'll stay with the Divine Prefecture Crown Prince. The Crown Prince's residence should be big enough to accommodate the people from the Divine Hall. How shameless! Qi Xian, Little Fatty, and the others cursed in their hearts. Without waiting for the Crown Prince to speak, the little stoic nodded, 100,000 a day's rent, absolutely no bargaining. Everyone staggered and almost fell to the ground. Didn't you just say that the dean was evil? Little miss, you're the number 1, incomparably evil person in the world. A priest behind Mi Yan had long been unable to restrain the anger in his heart. When he heard the little stoic's words, he instantly flared up. What did you say? Chapter 2802. 200,000 spirit coins per day. If you want to stay, then stay. If you don't want to, scram. Arbor threw down this sentence and pulled Mo Lien's hand, turning to leave. What? Just a second ago, you said there was no second price. But a second later, you freaking doubled the price. After taking a deep breath, Holy Sun Mi Yan said coldly, pay up. That priest's jaw was about to fall off. Starting from 5 days. Pay up. Holy Sun Mi Yan forced these 2 words out from between his teeth. When he said the word pay, he gritted his teeth and chewed on the word like he was chewing wax. She guessed that the anger in his heart was surging like an avalanche. How pitiful. He was actually angered to this extent by the little stoic. The priest trembled as he fished out a spirit coin card and shakily handed it to the little stoic. Arbor calmly snatched it and directly threw it to the stoic-faced headmaster Yun. He said very heroically, prepare 10 brand new sets of school uniforms. If there's even a single thread on them, refund me the money. 100,000 spirit coins for a set of uniforms. If there was even the slightest flaw, she would make this Yun Piaomiao suffer the consequences. Headmaster Yun shuddered and suddenly really wanted to go home to hug and cry with his elder brother. Big bro, how is this finding me a student? You're completely stuffing me with an ancestor. Mo Yen curled her lips in amusement and was led away by the little girl. Gather here at 7 a.m. tomorrow. At that time, I'll assign you new students the subject, Headmaster Yun hastily muttered. Seeing the two of them leave without looking back, he couldn't help but sigh. It looked like the academy was really going to be lively in the future. Qi Xianxian squeezed to Arbor's side and glanced at the group of people from the Temple of the Gods following behind them. She lowered her voice and asked, Jojo, since you know these guys don't have good intentions, why the hell did you take them in? Are you afraid they'll cause trouble? The little stoic was still indignant. This holy son's cultivation was much higher than that holy nun from before. Just now, she had almost suffered a great loss in the hands of this person. If it weren't for He Chen's timely appearance and blocking for her, she might have been beaten to the point of vomiting blood. Can 1,000,000 spirit coins make up for it? Heh, stop joking. They will suffer in the future. Lady Qiao Qiao winked at Qi Xianxian with her watery eyes. The two young ladies held hands and walked to the front, whispering something to each other. After Qi Xianxian heard Jojo's words, she felt extremely comfortable and giggled. That night, Holy Sun Mi Yen looked at his empty wing room and was so furious that his hair was about to explode. He knew that this girl was petty, but he didn't expect her to be so stingy. She actually only gave him a room, and there was nothing inside. You want a bed? Alright, I'll pay you 100,000 spirit coins. A stool? 50,000. A teacup? 20,000 for one. Holy Sun Mi Yen takes things out of his inner world one by one. He has never been so aggrieved before. Fortunately, he had plenty of daily necessities in his inner world, which was enough to last him a few nights. Holy Sun, why did we have to come with them and live here? The two guards who were helping the Holy Sun spread out a mattress in the corner and couldn't bear to see the Holy Sun so aggrieved couldn't help but grumble. Naturally, it's to observe those two people from a close distance. Holy Sun Mi Yen said coldly, that Crown Prince isn't easy to deal with. Now, it seems that Little Witch is also difficult to deal with. Chapter 2803. No wonder the holy nun had suffered such a huge loss in their hands. Even he could not gain any advantage in the hands of these people, not to mention the holy nun, Nya Yaoguang. Thinking of that icy expressionless face, the holy nun Mi Yan's eyes could not help but turn cold. He still had to give this little girl a special gift at the division ceremony tomorrow. The night passed without a word. Arbor's group had a good night's sleep and woke up energetically at 5 in the morning. The voice of the school administrator came from outside. He brought in a few large boxes and placed them in the courtyard. 10 sets of school uniforms, please accept them. Mata walked forward and opened each box to take a look. There were 2 to 3 sets of school uniforms in each box. They were pure white and had a spherical multicolored flower embroidered on the collar and chest area. Arbor felt that this flower was extremely familiar. Taking a closer look, wasn't this the longevity flower? So, the royal school's flower was the longevity flower? Could it be that there was a longevity tree planted in the royal school? Arbor's thoughts turned slightly, but she was still somewhat uncertain. The longevity tree's growing environment was extremely harsh. It would not bloom unless it was in the Xian domain or bear fruit unless it was in the God domain. She had raised the longevity tree on Paradise Planet for so long, but it still could not bear fruit in the spirit domain. The main reason was that the environmental conditions were not up to standard. According to Little Tree, it would probably only bear fruit after Paradise Planet ascended to the God domain. And ascending to the God domain, Arbor could not help but sigh when she thought of this. It was still too early. Her cultivation was only a level 11 great spiritual master. She was still very far from the true God domain cultivation. Take it slow, everything was not something that could be obtained by force. Xiao Mu had everyone carefully inspect their respective school uniforms. Zhan Ping flipped them over and over for a look, causing the steward who was delivering the school uniforms to the side to be at a loss for words. After everyone checked carefully, they put on their white school uniforms. This defensive spiritual clothing was indeed a priceless treasure that cost 100,000 spirit coins per set. As soon as they put it on, it automatically adjusted the width and length according to their respective figures. It was very fitting on their bodies, as if it was a second layer of skin that could breathe. It was extremely comfortable to wear. Jojo nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. The steward who delivered the uniform couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Before this, the principal had already instructed him to check the academy uniform that was sent over thoroughly. Not even a single thread could be found. These new students were really fussy. The steward wiped his sweat and let a few guards out. The people of Arbor were wearing white school uniforms. When they were sitting in the side hall and having dinner, they saw Holy Sun Mi Yen come over with a gloomy face with a dozen of his priests and guards. The little fatty almost choked on the porridge in his mouth. Everyone knew about what happened last night. The little girl gave Holy Sun Mi Yen and his group 3 rooms in total, but each room was unfurnished. The room was completely empty. It would be extremely difficult to even find a bed or a blanket, let alone any other furniture or furnishings. No, there was nothing. It must have been hard on Holy Sun Mi Yen and his group. They had to make do with sleeping on the floor for the whole night. At this moment, they all had panda eyes and looked listless. It was obvious that they did not sleep well. Mi Yen and his group were glaring at Arbor and his group. This was simply not a day for humans. The priests were silently criticizing in their hearts. Chapter 2804. Usually, when they were patrolling the Sun Moon Temple, they were always the center of attention and respected by everyone. How dare the crown prince of the divine land and his people neglect them like this? Xiao Mu and the others were currently eating breakfast around an 8-seater table. Looking back, Qi Xianxian almost laughed out loud. A priest took out a slightly old-school desk from his inner world with a dark face, placed a bench in front of the table, and invited the Holy Sun to sit down. She didn't know from which shabby warehouse in the academy this guy stole such an old desk and chair to make up the number. Although the Holy Sun's handsome face was also dark, he still sat down. Soon, the priest placed a set of bowls and chopsticks, and a guard came in with a pot of hot porridge and a few dishes. As a spiritual venerable, it didn't matter whether he ate or not. It was just that this Holy Sun had a habit of eating twice in the morning and at noon, unless he was in seclusion for cultivation. The meal was prepared by the 2 priests in the room. Holy Sun Mi Yen ate a few mouthfuls, and put down the spoon with some grievance in his heart. He couldn't eat any more. The main reason was that he was sitting in front of an old desk, surrounded by a group of onlookers. He was used to being arrogant and had never been ridiculed like this. Under such gazes, he was naturally dissatisfied. Holy Sun Mi Yen threw down the chopsticks angrily, stood up, and walked out first. Seeing that their master was in a bad mood, the priests and guards didn't dare to say anything, and hurriedly followed him out. Mi Yen sneered in his heart, "I'll let you be happy for a while, and you'll be in for a good show later." When Arbor and the others arrived at the practice field yesterday, there were already many old and new students lined up there, waiting for the mentors to come. Upon seeing Xiao Mu's appearance, many people retreated to the sides in terror, and a rather spacious path actually appeared in the center. It was as if Miss Xiao was some kind of scourge. Everyone looked at her cautiously. Qi Xianxian stared at those people one by one, and thought, "Our Jojo is not a beast that goes berserk everywhere. If you don't provoke her, nothing will happen." Morning. Jojo. Eldest young Sir Qin walked over from the crowd and waved at Arbor with a smile. Arbor looked up at him and saw Omega Kotoku standing beside him, looking at her with an unreadable expression. Mo Lien immediately sensed Sir Qiaoqiao's grip on his hand tighten slightly. He furrowed his brows and reached out to hold her hand gently. Looking at the group of people in front of them, he said coldly, "Make way." Eldest young Sir Qin pursed his lips and shuffled slightly to the side. Arbor and Mo Lien walked to the front of the group and found an empty space to stand. The group of senior students couldn't help but sneak glances at them, secretly sizing them up. Dean Yun led a group of consecrators and tutors to the practice field very quickly. Looking at the group of energetic students below, he nodded with a smile and said, "Today's main purpose is to help the new students divide the subjects." During the test, everyone had been tested according to the contents of the invitation letter. For example, the alchemists were naturally tested for pill refinement, and the artificers were tested for weapon forging. Most of them were naturally cultivators. The cultivators' test was the simplest, they just had to pass the corresponding test steels. Chapter 2805. For the pure cultivation subject, all 322 new students this year will be led by Instructor Ma and Instructor Gao. Those whose names are being read, please stand behind the two instructors. Forging branch, 21 new students this year will be led by Instructor Zhang. Pill branch, 33 new students will be led by Instructor Zheng from now on. Talisman branch, 5 new students will be led by Instructor Zhang. Concealed weapons branch, 59 new students. Zither branch, led by calligraphy and painting. Arbor dozed off as he listened. After the two instructors helped Dean Yun read everyone's names, 2 hours had passed, and the school's subject assignment finally ended. The little fellow stood alone in front of the new students. She looked left and right with a baffled expression. Why was she the only one who hadn't found a group? Just now, Mo Lien had also been called to stand at the forging branch. She was the only one who hadn't been claimed. The entire practice field was silent. At this moment, everyone's gazes were on Arbor. On the large practice field, all the students were lined up according to their assigned subjects. Both the new and old students were lined up in order. Our dear Qiao Mu's small face instantly darkened. Qi Xianxian and company, who had long been herded into the new students group, couldn't help but facepalm. Seriously, he didn't know what had happened again. Why did he leave their little stoic behind? One of the accompanying instructors quickly poked Dean Yun, indicating for him to quickly look at the little stoic's expression. This stoic face looked like she was about to explode. Only then did Dean Yun realize what was going on. He looked at the little girl with a chuckle and said, "Student Xiao, which subject do you want to study in? You can choose the cultivation hall, pill hall, or talisman hall." It was evident that this Dean Yun already had a thorough understanding of the little stoic's situation. He knew that she wasn't only a cultivator with outstanding talent, but she was also an alchemist and talisman practitioner. The little fellow's foul expression improved slightly, and she cast a glance in her husband's direction. Her husband was enthusiastically dragged over by the weapon forging hall's instructors. She didn't have any talent in weapon forging, so she naturally couldn't follow along. Mo Lien also felt unbearably vexed. He had originally already started walking towards the cultivation hall. But he didn't expect to be stopped by this instructor Zhang halfway. After a series of exaggerated explanations, he was led to the refining hall in a daze. However, the royal school was also quite interesting. He rarely revealed his talent in refining in front of others, so he didn't know where they found out about this. Of course he wanted to go to the cultivation hall with his wife, but now when Instructor Zhang saw him move, he immediately ran up to him and stared at him, earnestly advising him. If he were to stay in the refining hall, he would be able to take part in the cultivation hall as a subsidiary subject. In the future, he would be able to participate in the Heaven Yuan ranking competition. There were many benefits to staying in the weapon refining hall. Every month, he could even obtain a lot of forging materials. Hearing this, Crown Prince Mo's head swelled again. He felt that this mentor probably hadn't talked to anyone for several hundred years, so she was terribly talkative. Because of this delay, the little stoic decisively chose the cultivation hall. The reason was very simple. Mo Lien went to the weapon forging branch, Duan Yu went to the concealed weapons branch, and the Qin estate's people basically stayed in the pill hall, so she definitely wouldn't go to the pill hall. There probably wasn't much to learn in a place like the talisman hall. She already had the complete talisman technique, the golden talisman jade tome, so she naturally didn't need anything else. Also wait. Chapter 2806. Therefore, after picking and choosing, she felt that the cultivation hall was the most perfect one. In the future, she would be able to train, have fun, with her friends again. Arbor expressionlessly walked towards the cultivation hall freshman. Everyone retreated to the sides, their gazes filled with respect. What a joke, they didn't want to provoke a fellow who could summon a giant sand scorpion at any time. Xiao Mu disapproved of their attitude, and she ran to stand beside her teammates, the little fatty, and the others. Qi Xuanxuan's face was filled with joy as she pulled Arbor's hand and said, "That's great, we can train and play together again." The word play at the end was probably the main point, little fatty and the rest added in their hearts. Arbor nodded his head, his large watery eyes curving. Just as he was about to say something, a loud voice resounded throughout the entire training grounds. "I heard that there are many new symbol masters in the academy. I, Jin Zhaoyang, would like to challenge them. I wonder who dares to accept my challenge." Holy Sun Mi Yen stood beside the dean. When he heard this voice, the corners of his mouth curled up into a casual smile. "Here it comes." Principal Yun frowned and immediately rejected, "Today is not the day of the sparring session. If you want to spar, wait for another day, Principal. I am very much looking forward to seeing the outstanding performance of these new students. Don't you all want to see the strength of these new symbol masters?" The man named Jin Zhaoyang flashed and arrived in front of the crowd. Duan Mu Qing glanced at that person and said indifferently, "This person looks young, but he should be in his early 50s. Arbor's and Qi Xuanxuan's jaws almost dropped to the ground. "He hasn't graduated at the age of 50. Little Fatty pursed his lips and said, "Maybe he just entered the academy not long ago." After all, the Imperial Academy doesn't have an age limit when it comes to recruiting talents. The two little girls thought about it and nodded at each other. "Jojo, you have to be careful. I'm afraid this person is coming for you." Duan Mu Qing saw that Jin Zhaoyang's gaze was sweeping towards them and said coldly. Lu Yu rubbed his chin. "I think we should be careful of this Jin Zhaoyang. I heard that among the new talisman masters, there are 2 talisman masters from the talisman aristocratic families of the Divine Prefecture." Jin Zhaoyang laughed and said, "I wonder where these 2 talisman masters are." Mu Roxuan did not expect that this fire would actually burn her. She could not help but be slightly stunned. Pursing her lips, she lightly moved her feet and walked out of the crowd. "I'm Mu Roxuan. Greetings, senior brother." "Ha ha ha ha." Jin Zhaoyang nodded repeatedly. Good, good. He was courageous, but what about his strength? "Little junior sister, let's set the limit at 3 offensive talismans. If you can withstand 3 of my offensive talismans, then it's your win." Senior brother Jin Zhaoyang was originally from the Tsang Prefecture and came from the Tsang Prefecture's talisman Qi clan. Later on, for some unknown reason, he fell out with the Tsang Prefecture's Qi clan and left the clan. Until now, he has been alone. Someone at the side relished in talking about Jin Zhaoyang and shared the gossip he had obtained with others. Immediately, it attracted many people's attention. Senior brother Jin Zhaoyang seems to have broken through the yellow rank Great Talisman Master proficiency level and reached the yellow rank Great Talisman Master perfection stage. When this was said, the surrounding people were in an uproar and exclaimed in surprise.